Good evening. We'll now call the City Council special meeting to order for February 4th, 2019 at 6 p.m. Please rise for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be given by Brother Freddie Clark. That's you, Freddie. Come on up.
I got the floor.
That's you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I guess I'm going to speak to you for a few moments out of the word of the Lord. And I'm thinking about Psalm 100 tonight, where it says, "Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands." And I guess that includes Avon Park. And someone said, "I can't carry a tune in a bucket." Well, just make a noise. As long as it's joyful, the Lord will accept it. And so when we praise Him tonight, why, let's just be happy about it, because it said, "Serve the Lord of gladness." Always takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile, so we won't work so hard. We'll give our face a rest. It's good to meet you folks, and it seems to me like I've got two congregations here. And I have preached in churches where it was a circular platform and it kept going round and round, so I didn't miss anybody. All right, we come before His presence with singing. We enter into His gates with thanksgiving. We come into His courts with praise. Somebody said, "I wonder when I'm in the Spirit." Well, I said, you can always know when you're in the Spirit because you will feel the Spirit. For God is a Spirit, and they who worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. Now, God is invisible. He is all in all. He fills the universe. No man have seen God at any time. But Jesus Christ is the fullness of the Godhead bodily. He is the image of that invisible God, the brightness of His glory, the express image of His person. When you stop and think about it, by one Spirit are we all baptized into one body. God is the Spirit and Christ is the body. And if we move in God, happily if we seek after Him and feel after Him, we might just find Him, though He be not far from any one of us. For in Him we live and move and have our being. So when you feel the Spirit of God, you know that you're in God. Without faith it's impossible to please God. He that cometh unto God must believe that He is, and that He's a rewarder of them that diligently seek Him. Since He's so mighty and so vast, you got to get into Him for Him to receive your worship. So that's why we try to do everything in the Spirit, and not in the flesh, and not in a soulish state, but in the presence that you can actually feel. You know the natives, the Indians of this country in the beginning, the white men always called them heathens and uncivilized savages. But you know, every one of them believed in the Great Spirit. They would always talk about the Great Spirit. And God is a Spirit. He fills the universe and He's outside. Thank God we have found His body and we know His name. We know how to get through to Him. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me." And Philip said, "Lord, show us the Father, and it sufficeth us." And Jesus said, "Philip, have I been so long with you, and you don't know me? He that has seen me has seen the Father." In other words, the only part of God that we can see with the naked eye, because God is invisible, no man has seen God at any time, is the Son of the living God. And He says to Philip, "If you've seen me, you have seen the Father." So we are looking, when we see Jesus Christ, we're looking at the body of God. And how hard is that anyway? He's manifested Himself in blood, fire, pillars of smoke, spoke through donkeys, spoke to animals. They marched up to an ark, two by two. And He's always done many manifestations, signs, and wonders. So I don't think it's a hard thing for the Almighty God to appear in a human body. And Jesus rose from the dead on the third day, and our whole salvation is based on the resurrection. Because anybody can die, anybody can be buried, anybody can shed their blood, but will they live again? So because he lives, we shall live also. So we have now hope of eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. Does that make everybody happy?
Yes, sir.
Well, let's just serve the Lord of gladness and praise him a couple of times. Say, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Now, I'm going to have to quit because I'm feeling the Holy Ghost, and I may start preaching here, and that's not the purpose of the evening. So, God bless you all, and it was wonderful to meet you. Incidentally, I came to Avon Park in 1966. I don't live here, but I had a bluegrass band at the time, and we used to perform here on the gazebo on Main Street, and we preached in all the little churches around here. Been a long time since I've been in Avon Park, however, but it's very good to be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. You may be seated. Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Councilwoman Gray?
Here.
Councilman Spurlock?
Here.
Councilwoman Sutherland?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Barnard absent. Mayor Anderson?
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. With Councilmember Bernard absent, several of these agenda items is something that he brought forward. Does the council wish to discuss that tonight or postpone until, I would assume, the next meeting so he can be here?
I'd like for him to be here. That's just me, but that's up to the rest of the board.
I have no doubt that we all have comments to add to it, but it kind
Yeah.
of seems irrelevant to talk about it without the full board here. Okay.
Which items were his?
I know for sure the charter was. That was the main one. The purchasing policy, was that his or was
I
that
believe that was his. Not, the only ones that are mine are 11 and 12.
11 and 12? So the CRA, that wasn't yours?
Oh, yes, and well, he had CRA as well, I think.
Okay. What, do you have
Yes,
something? Okay.
yeah, I do have CRA.
All right, so number 1 and number 3 so far. Street signs. Who brought that forward?
Miss Brenda?
Okay.
Yeah, Ms. Gray.
Yeah.
Southside street lights.
Me.
Clam truck trash pickup.
Me.
Recycling.
I think that was under Jim's.
Jim's, okay. So number 7 as well. Number 1, 3, and 7. Ethics training.
I think I did that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Airport FBO. That would have been something that came up at the last meeting, right?
No, the only things that were added to this are number 11 and 12, and I didn't get my stuff in. I mean, I had verbal conversations with David, so if that's one of them, ones that made it to the list, then that's one of them, but I'll take it.
Okay. We have stuff to add on the Brickell building, community center.
Yes.
Yep. And finally, the church services center.
Yeah.
So we have number 1, 3, 7, 1, 3, and 7
That we will not discuss tonight.
that we will not discuss tonight.
Okay, would you like me to put that on the following business meeting agenda for the 11th?
Please.
Okay.
Jerry, because this is a special meeting, do we have to motion to remove those? Or can you just
No, the only, the reason I restrict those things on this, special meetings, and I've said that in the past, is because when a special meeting, you give a topic, some people, if you try to add a topic to it, will not come, won't know that topic is to be discussed, and they would not have gotten their opportunity to come.
okay.
It's not a Sunshine Act violation today, but I expect that one day it will be. So,
Got it.
in abundance of caution, I've always said that. But removing stuff, you can do that at any time.
So let me ask you, by removing these off the agenda, let's just say we would have discussed this and he's not here and he's at home watching it on TV. How does that affect his decision-making when he sees the sentiment of the council here discussing an item here that he wanted to bring up?
Just like anybody else, I suppose. I mean,
Okay. I mean, I just don't know what to say if we were going to be, had we discussed any, because I know he had some input on CRA. That's something that he's talked and vocalized in the
Yeah.
past. Anyway, if it's okay, if it's a
Well-
public meeting, so,
You can talk about it, and then if he wants to bring it up again, then he can just simply ask David to put that on the
Okay.
next agenda as well.
Right.
okay.
Okay. Having said that, moving along to item number 2, CRA.
Okay, well, I had placed this one on the agenda. One of my main campaign promises was to look at the CRAs and to combine the advisory boards into one autonomous board. I left a message on Carol Westmoreland's phone today. I've been unable to reach her, but in the past, I had spoken to her, as well as Mr. Jim LaRue from LaRue Consulting, who was the gentleman's firm that did the CRA plans for the city of Avon Park. And it was relatively simple to just combine the advisory boards by selecting the chairs, letting the chairs select an individual from their board, and to have a regular CRA board that is autonomous and without any, I wouldn't say oversight. They wouldn't be under the city council. They would be an autonomous board, similar to what Sebring has and 98% of the CRAs throughout the state. We have a very antiquated system with our advisory boards, and as many of you know, there weren't many meetings held on several of them. The airport, I know, hasn't met for quite some time, even prior to this new council. So because they can't discuss things, because it's sunshine, but yet no meetings are being held, it would be simpler on staff, it would be simpler for the city, and I think it would be more effective for the CRAs to have their own executive director that they would hire under the scope of skill sets that they want that individual to have. If it wants to be shared with the city, that would be great. If not, then it's on the CRA, but I think it's something that we should try. We don't have economic development going on in any of the two, either Main Street or South Side. We don't have any aviation issues going on with the airport CRA, other than just the grants that come in.
Now, are you wanting the CRA to all become one CRA?
Correct.
Or just the board to become one board?
One board, and right now we are one board. It is the city
I
council.
understand that, so you just want to make it another entity, basically.
Correct, where they are not advisory, where they are autonomous and they make the decisions on
But
their
you're
own.
still going to have the 3 different CRAs.
Yes, they would be restricted through their budgets. It would be a restricted account on their budget sheet. You can't combine the money. Southside can never touch airport. Airport can never touch Southside. And Main Street can't share their money with anyone else. So as they go through a board meeting, they would just go through it depending on the section that they represent. But I'm fully convinced that no one from the airport is going to tell Southside, no, you can't do that. And no one from the Southside is going to tell them, no, you can't have that runway. But yet all of them together, I think, as a grassroots group, can certainly learn from one another and see that they all are on the same mission with the city, which is to promote Avon Park and its economic development, because all of them do that. They all take money away from the general fund, so to speak, and it goes into the CRA. And there's no better way to expend those funds than by the individuals that represent those districts. So I've spoken to all 3 of the chairs. They seem to be on board with it. I do want to get more input from them, but at the same time, I think that, we need to discuss whether or not we're willing to let it go. I think it can be. It works everywhere else. There's no reason why it can't work here. I think the combined effort of all of the advisory board members and the number of businesses that they represent and the years of experience that they have amongst themselves, there's probably over 300 hours worth of experience there. That's a lot more than this board. So, my whole thing is to get them on board. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll know that. We will know that in short time, and they will know it. If they just can't get along, then it comes back to the city, and then we get their advisory boards again, and we have to start from scratch all over again. But we're going nowhere. We're stuck on stuck, and I think it would be a good move for us to give, some trust to those individuals that for years have been trying to get some things done and have been unable to do so.
Right. Of course, you'll have to amend the ordinance to provide for a plan as to how they'll be selected, and, so that you have an even number of people from each one of the boards, if that's what you want to do.
Well, I think by
they'll have to-
statute, you have an availability of either 5 or 7. So it would be 2 from each area and then 1 7th person, which this council can select, or they can say this is who we want. It could be someone from this board, or it could be someone from the community, but it would have to be someone from either one of these 3 districts, because
Okay.
that's the rule. You either work, live, own property, or serve on some foundation or board within that district.
If it was from this board, they'd have to be a non-voting member.
Correct.
Liaison.
But I would prefer that it be a voting member, because then they would have an uneven number to work with. You don't want to have ties, and then what do you do then, you know? But what I had asked staff to do was to provide us with some budget information regarding the CRAs.
Well,
It's-
I generally recommend that you not do people from the board, simply because if another commissioner or council person wants to come into the audience of their meeting and ask questions and so on, you get into an issue as to whether you're having a city commission meeting.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And I think that being that they would be public meetings, anyone from the council would be able to attend.
Of course.
That's not a big deal. So it would just be up to figuring out who that odd person will be. But what I asked for staff to do was put together some was a CRA information, which is attached to this here. And, is it?
That's not CRA, that's for.
No, is it inside
insurance
the
payment.
packet? I'm sorry. Was it in the packet?
I didn't see
I
it.
didn't see it.
You know what it was? I sent it to David after the fact and to Ricky after the fact. We had conversed about this. There were incremental fundings that were provided to both the South Side and Main Street. I think Main Street ended up with an additional amount of money. You know, when they did the expansion areas, there was additional funds there. So both of them are in the black in that sense. I'm going to kind of bounce around, and I hope you all can follow my train of thought.
As long as we're keeping it on CRA.
It's all CRA, but one of the things regarding the Main Street CRA in particular is I wanted to see if Ricky would be able to figure out, and I spoke to him about this 2 weeks ago, from the financial aspect, if we were to work, first of all, there's a just under $900,000 loan that Main Street is paying on. Not all of those funds have been expended, so they're currently paying interest on money that they haven't even spent.
Right.
I'd like for that to be removed and either redone, retooled, or restructured. In addition to that, if they end up doing any projects with the Brickell Building, for example, with their CRA funds, they're pretty much strapped for the next 25 years where they're having to pay $35,000 a year to offset the expense of the purchase of the Brickell Building. And I had asked Ricky to see whether or not it was feasible, and David as well, to see if it was feasible, whether or not the council would be in the position to forgive that loan entirely. I don't think that advisory board wanted it that way, but yet if they did that, then the city could lease it back to the CRA, and then the CRA could go ahead and do improvements to the building with its money. By the way it's structured right now, they're going to be tied up, and if the CRA owns it, the city can't put money into it, but if the city owns it, then they can. So there are some issues there.
Don't we have closer to $80,000 coming in per year on the Main Street?
Yes, but what I was saying about the expansion areas is that increased the revenue to the CRA districts. Both South Side and Main Street got extra money. Airports went down because, of course, the hangars were torn out.
Right.
So their funding, which was $20,000, let's just put it this way: when we dropped our millage, we eliminated the city's contribution to the CRA. So all we get right now is the county's portion.
Right.
So the county portion to the airport, for example, which used to be $20,000, is now $18,000, and I'm just throwing numbers out there. It's dropping $800 a year. South Side has gone up, I believe, $8,000. It's been up for the last 2 years. It's increased, and then Main Street has also increased in the $20,000 range twice. So next year is just going to be a little bit more each time. So again, none of the money can be commingled. They all have to keep it restricted. But in regards to the Main Street CRA, I'd like for them to look at whether or not we can retool that loan.
Yeah.
David wanted to say something.
Obviously, for the purposes of this conversation, we should probably just try to focus on the structuring, if this is a route that the council wants
Yeah.
to take, because if we get into the individual details, we're going to be here, for a
And
long
I
time.
get that, but just know that those details would be part of the program for the CRAs, because they're not going to have as much money that they're going to need to do the projects that they want in order to be able to be autonomous. And that whole loan structure is an issue. And anyway, David was going to say something.
I have a memo here from Ricky on the, what the revenues have been this fiscal year right now from the county. Main Street CRA is $140,789. Southside CRA is $39,380. Airport CRA is $20,078, and the total is $200,247. That's this so far from the county.
And that's the revenue per year.
No, that's what we've received so far from the county.
That's all you're going to get.
Okay.
So they usually give you your funding in February, and you budget that out beforehand. So these numbers are obviously including the expanded areas.
Mm-hmm.
So
And you don't think that they could work with that much money?
Well, if you think about 35,000 of that is going to go towards the loan,
Right.
that could
That
drop.
still leaves 105.
Right, yeah, but that would also drop if you restructure the loan because they haven't spent all the money out of that loan. They've only spent, let's see, the parking lot, from what I understand, was paid out of this fund. I mean, it was like the little piggy bank where money just kept on getting taken out of it, and CRA, you're paying for it, CRA, you're paying for it. Whereas historically, a lot of these things would have been paid for by the city. So I'd like to see if the loan can be forgiven 100%. If it can't, then only charge them the interest at the minimal rate possible that they've actually spent their money on. Why are we charging them? Did you know that it's going to be over $170,000 worth of interest alone? And they're paying that, but yet they haven't spent the money.
Right.
It's
I have
silly.
I have an expenditure sheet
Okay.
on what's been done to date from January 17th, 2016
Okay.
to date, which was the last one was July 1st, 2018. $220,185 has been spent so far on the Brickell building. Now, some of that is reimbursable once we get a deal with the insurance company, but right now that's what's been spent.
Obviously, that wouldn't include the purchase of the building.
That does not include
No,
the
but
purchase
that's
of
the
building.
brick, that's the parking lot,
Yes.
that's the roof,
Right.
Mhm.
right? So, and
Yes.
the roof, has the reimbursement from the insurance been to pay that yet? Have we
Not
gotten
yet.
the money?
Not yet.
So, that right there, CRA is paying interest on insurance money that's not here yet.
Wasn't the building somewhere around 330,000?
I think it was 345, 360, something like that for the purchase of the building.
What I have here also is a memo from Ricky where he was reviewing the information regarding the purchase of it. The source of the funds for the purchase came from the infrastructure fund of $271,683.50. Repayment of the funds by the Main Street CRA should go to reimburse the infrastructure fund first and then to the general fund if any expenditures were incurred by the general fund, in Ricky's opinion. This is due to the restricted use of infrastructure sales tax revenues. The forgiveness of the loan, if we do that after repaying the purchase price of the building, would be beneficial to Main Street CRA since it began the 2017-2018 with a negative fund balance. So that's what he's discovered so far.
What was his recommendation in the long run?
He didn't offer a recommendation on that yet.
Okay.
That's for y'all to decide. I can have him here at the next meeting if you want to get into some more details about that. But his concern was the infrastructure fund versus the general fund.
Garrett.
Yep.
May I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
There was, when this board, right after the election, there was a document given to this board, and I think at one of the meetings, I think Maria asked the attorney to check into that, and I'd like to know the status of that document. There was some findings, there were some things that had occurred concerning the CRA. Do you remember that?
I do remember that, and actually started doing work on that, but we got involved in a lot of other things and got diverted.
Okay.
I spoke with
Carol?
the
No, I'm sorry, go on.
same firm that
Jim LaRue?
Jim LaRue, and I asked for some documents that I needed to use in order to evaluate, and I haven't received those yet. Ordinances and so on. It's the things that are referred to in this. I need to review those, and so I have to see them as well.
Well, would it not be a clean slate if you had one board?
No, I think that the problems that she was alleging in there, there were several, but one of them was that they weren't originally done right originally. I don't know if that's right or not. I don't have the ordinances, but if those were all done again, then that would be that would be it. But as far as this board sitting at, there's no problem with that. Having another board, I don't think there's a problem with that. I do recall that is, it just requires to have one board. When I got here, there was 3 boards, so we changed that. So once I get all the information, I can evaluate that memo and give you an answer. Or it may be cheaper in the long run to have LaRue's folks look that over, and if there's issues, then they can recommend some actions and take those actions.
Aren't they the ones that originally prepared that?
No, they did do some work on extending some of them.
Yeah, the expansion
years
areas.
ago.
Yeah.
They worked on the expansion areas and the plans.
Wouldn't they have examined the way that the plan was structured during that time?
All they were tasked to do was the plans. They
Got
weren't
it.
tasked to look at historic references.
Got it.
And from what I remember in that memo, there were information that she was unable to obtain to really get to a final conclusion.
It's like ordinances from like the
Yeah.
70s or 80s.
I don't know,
or
but the
something.
CRA Main Street, I believe, was created in the late 80s, no, early 80s, or was it late 80s? Anyway, they all came at different intervals. There were issues with the airport, which was done, I don't know who did the airport one, but it was a 2-pager. I don't understand how that one ever got done. But I know that some of the concerns that she had, I know that the city auditor way back had decided that the auditors thought that it was fine. So I think we have some professional conflicting opinions, you know, and I mean, I would like it to be as favorable as possible, obviously, so that we can move forward with this. I don't want that to be the reason why we can't become autonomous.
It is what Jim LaRue does, so if we turn him on to what's in the memo and say, you need to evaluate these things, and, you know, I think he can do a lot less than what I can do it for, as much as I like attorney's fees. You know, I think it would be cheaper for you to go that route.
Well, I agree.
Could we have someone instruct him to do that? Because I would like to know, there was some pretty heavy stuff in that memo.
Oh, she accused
And,
people were going to go to prison or something like
and-
that. I just think that that is just way off base. But nonetheless, that would be accusatory of this CRA board, in which you've been a member for 19 years. I'd hate to, you know, remind you of that. But the bottom line is, moving forward, I don't think that we have to rehash a bunch of old stuff in order for us to get an autonomous board. Anyway, I would like for this council, if possible, to direct the city manager to contact Mr. LaRue. Do we need to go to procurement for that? Or can we, he's like the consultant at large. He's done more CRAs than anyone in the state.
Well, it'll be an
RFQ?
RFP.
RFP?
Yeah. You could do it by an RFQ, but an RFP would probably be the best way. What is your proposal on getting this done? And then,
Anyone can put in for it then?
yeah, I mean, somebody with experience,
Right.
obviously, qualifications to do this type of evaluation.
We would weigh their qualifications whenever we receive the proposals, right?
Right.
Do we need to set a time limit for this?
It's a 30-day procurement policy, so you'd have to do whatever it takes to get the paperwork in gear. You know, honestly, if you called Carol Westmoreland from the FRA, she can give some really wonderful ideas on how to approach this. The FRA, if we are up to date on our dues, then they should be able to provide some legal advice that is part of our due structure, as well as provide some professional advice on how to go from here. You know, they are the mothership of all CRAs, and Carol, there's no one better than Carol. She's been at it for 30 years or so.
And the express purpose is to be able to see what's need to do to combine the three.
Yeah,
into one.
and you know,
As well as
No, it's-
examine that
The
memo.
document, that's
Right.
my request.
Can anybody get that document for me?
Yes.
You got it?
You got it.
Okay.
Okay. So we got those two things. Now back
you.
to the loan. So we've got roughly,
You
you
got a
know,
hand up
And
out
somebody
there.
that wants to speak.
yes, sir. You know the drill.
Oh, yeah? Okay. I'm Gerald Snell, 320 East Washington Street, Avon Park, Florida. I'm chairman of the Southside CRE District. In the past, almost a year, we didn't meet, you know, and I questioned for us not meeting during that period of time where city staff was supposedly paid for meetings from our budget, and they said they weren't, but, I mean,
I think what you're referencing is, at one point, the individuals that worked on CRA tasks had portions of their pay coming from the CRA cost centers.
correct.
And Main Street, because it's the bigger one with the most funds, paid for half of it, and then Airport and Southside paid for a quarter apiece, to the tune of about $52,000. So we know that there's money in the CRA funds to
Correct.
be able to hire an executive director or an employee that could be tandem between the city. That way you can get more bang for your buck, and probably someone with a larger skill set. But at the end of the day, if those monies are still there, aside from the fact that now we have more, you know, I'm not saying to spend all your money on staff, but you would have to have somebody that was, cognizant of Florida Statute 119 as well. You don't want to just hire someone willy-nilly and then all your records go somewhere that you don't know where they are.
Right.
But certainly there's money in there to hire an individual that I would love for the CRAs to create the job description for that individual and let them hire the individual and let them monitor that individual and give the evaluations. Again, if they're autonomous, that's what they would do.
And in the past, having all the city staff there, we always had Ms. Gray, our liaison there, and
Main Street has their own liaison, and so does the airport.
But I just feel as though that we've been overlooked so long. I mean, and things just didn't get done. It was always said, "I'll do it," but it never got done. Every year, I've been chosen by Carol Westmoreland at the state level to do the diversity. I represent the city of Avon Park every year, diversity session, and pretty much advisory boards at the state conference are pretty much obsolete.
Dinosaurs.
Yeah, they're CRAs. That's what they are. And I feel as though that, we could move forward better since we have a new expansion area. Got some good ideas I brought back from the conference that we could do, and I just would like to see this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. Yeah, I mean, I'll say, without seeing all the logistics of actually getting it into works, I mean, I'm all for having them be autonomous from the city council. I really don't want to preside over the CRA board. I think that if we can find a way to represent the town the same way that we have now or better, it's going to be more nimble. It's going to be faster. They're going to be solely devoted. And the biggest complaint that I've heard from past members of those boards is that they feel like they have no power to actually do anything.
Right. Well, it's an advisory board. All they can do is make a recommendation, but whether the recommendation gets done or not, you never know. Or they would spend money on signage and all of these great plans, and then those plans would never get implemented because it's just it would stop. Let's do it, but then there wasn't anyone to actually do it. So they could hold someone's feet to the fire, and I know that the chairs, as they sit right now, are very much involved. I know Galen has threatened to remove herself from the board for the last couple of years, and I've begged her to stay each time. I think that she comes with a lot of information and experience. And love for the district, and I think that's what it takes. And anyway, you know where I stand on it.
I would like to see the members of the board, if not all, at least the majority, designated by the city council, though. Yeah, the city council is the only board that is elected by the people, and I do think it's probably the best policy to have the only elected officials select the board that's then going to represent the people. Yes, ma'am. Name and address, please.
Galen Thomas, 703 West Winifred Street. One observation I want to make on that. If the way the 1988 plan was written, everything had to go back through the board. One of the shortcomings of being a committee designated by the council is what we ran into with the mall beautification. We can't talk to the council.
Right.
So I was thinking that if we are an autonomous CRA board, there's still nothing much we can do without coming before the council and getting
Why is that?
Well, we've got to get our PUDs approved. We've got to get anything that we want to do is going to have to be permitted by the city, approved by the city. So in that way, as long as we have a liaison from the city, and the way it's structured is that it's clear, what we have to do to make things happen, then because the 88 plan was created so that the council could control everything. And unfortunately, unless they want the responsibility of being the CRA board, doing the research, doing the work, making the decisions, keeping it going, then that's not the right way to do it. If you want to do that, no problem. Hire your own director, and y'all deal with it. And, that's fine. But if you want to have an autonomous board that makes decisions and then tells the city, we need a check for this and this and this, that check's not going to be written if it's not approved of somewhere along the way. I don't know exactly
Yeah.
how that happens,
Well,
but Sebring can tell us, because that's the way Sebring does it.
Well, I think if they're autonomous, would they not have their own checkbook with 2 signatures required? And,
Absolutely.
you know, so, I mean, but as far as the zoning and things like that, you'd have to come before them like any other person anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, the vast majority of what the CRA does does facade grants. That's where the bulk of the money
Well, that's
goes.
what they have done in the past.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what is
There's
it
so
that-
much more that needs to be done in the city of Avon Park that falls under slum and blight.
Such as?
Economic development.
Such
And,
as?
facade development is only a piece of it. Well, the Brickell building, what needs to happen to that building to get it marketed? The same thing with the Wild, each of these projects. And then you skip up on the hill, Prospect Summit and DeSoto, and you see the situation and the conditions that people live in there. 1 block off of Main Street.
Yeah.
That is slum and blight, and that's the kind of thing that CRAs are designed to address. Not cosmetic, making things pretty, but helping solve problems.
Yeah. Well,
And do I have all the answers? No. I'm not saying
I
I
think
do.
the board would wield a lot more power than what you're giving it credit for. You know, I think that you see a lot of roadblocks that are not there, and having a liaison from this board really wouldn't do you any good, because one liaison, they're not going to be able to vote, they're not going to be able to speak for the board, they're not going to be able to issue you permits, they're not going to be able to give you anything.
Can they be a member on the board? I haven't talked about how all this goes. I've just read the statute.
Right. But as far as zoning and things like that, I mean, it's no different than any other construction.
Exactly.
Even the city.
Exactly.
Even the city has to go through the zoning process
Exactly.
like anybody else.
Yeah.
So, it's like either you want to be the board or set up an executive board, and I don't really care. I don't mind serving with all 3 districts on a single advisory board. That doesn't bother me either. But, it's got to be something where people can talk and people can plan and
But
make
you
things
Wouldn't you do
happen.
that at
You
your
can't-
meetings?
I'm sorry?
Wouldn't you do that at your meetings, though? Talk to each other at the meeting. You said
Yeah, at a
people-
little hour-long meeting. That's once a month. It's
I think what it came down to was just having someone that is a staff person that would actually carry the torch. And that's been the problem.
That's
is
the main
that,
problem.
If you're not going to have the communication with the city manager that allows that employee that's hired by the city to do the work of the CRA, then you're not going to get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have your own staff person, and I know that David is much more resilient and effective
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that, I'll let this person do their job if that's what they were hired to do. Wouldn't have his thumb on them that they're going to have to go do something else.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a CRA employee, that is your employee.
Mm-hmm.
What I meant about sharing somebody was, in order to be cost effective, if you wanted someone that you could pay and the city paid for the other half of that individual, then that person can carve their time out to where they're doing some things for the city and some things for the CRA. But they would be the one that would call Robert. They would be the one that would call Josh for this. And
and
they
the
would
realtor and
be the, right, it would be that person.
and Carol Westmoreland
Correct.
and fill out the paperwork and do all the
Right,
reports,
right.
all the things that have to be done.
Well, and that's what she's anticipating. But with regard to not being able to talk, you can't talk now to your board members. It's an advisory board. You can't talk to other
But
advisory
if
board
we had an independent board, I could go to the council and say,
Yes.
what do you think about this? How can we do this? How can we
Yes.
do that?
You-
right now-
you could.
I can't talk to anybody.
Yeah, and
Well, you can. There's nothing that stops you from talking now for this advisory board. Why you stop now?
I'm sorry.
Well, you're talking to them now. You can only talk to them while they're a board. You can talk to individual members individually.
I
But
think
I understand what the difference
Not
is.
according to the sunshine interpretation that we were given.
Yeah, that was
we
wrong.
were limited from talking to the board as well as our own advisory committee members.
No,
No,
I
that's not
thought
true.
it was. I thought they said you couldn't talk to each other.
You can't
And the
talk to each other.
council,
They were told they
because there
couldn't talk
might
to
be
council.
something that was
I
going to
don't
be
know about
voted
that.
on. Now, if all that's
But
incorrect,
so-
then good. Maybe we could get back to making things happen.
Now, you can talk to You can talk to the council.
all day long.
You can talk to individual council members. The only thing you can't do. Well, they're really not even
Polling.
staff members is polling, but they're not even staff members. So I don't know if that's an issue, but it's better to avoid it. But I don't know that there's a problem with that now. But the way it's going to change, it's certainly going to be easier for you because most of the work you're going to be doing, and you might come before the board in a workshop or something periodically just to, they can have a workshop before one of their meetings a month or something, and you can say, here's what we're planning on doing. What do you think about this?
Okay, now let me just back up and eliminate some of this. What I wanted to do to start with was to hire a staff person. We were working on the position description. All of that was in place, and it was started, and it was squelched. So I'm with Maria with what she's saying about that. We already have a lot of that started and done.
Gary, let me ask you a question. Do you think that you would be more effective being able to make your own decisions rather than have to just simply send a concern to the council and let us make the choices? In other words, if you were on the actual CRA board, you do what we do.
That's a frightening thought, Garrett.
As of right now. But do you think that you would be more effective, or do you prefer the way it is now, where you simply, as a board, send your request to the actual CRA board, which is us?
I'd like to interject one thing before
Thank
you
you.
answer that. Part of the problem was that if the advisory boards didn't meet or didn't have a meeting, or if there was something that all of a sudden was such an urgency, it would just go straight to the mothership, which was the council, and the advisory board never had a clue.
Right.
And that happened
It's
every
happened
other month.
a lot
It
of
was
times, yeah.
very frequent. Last minute decisions, someone got sick, they didn't have a quorum. They had the longest time with only 3 people serving on the board because they couldn't get any more advisory board members. And if one of them was sick, they didn't have a quorum, they wouldn't meet. It just was this consistent lack of traction. So it stuck. If you run the same risk, obviously, that you may not have a quorum with your own autonomous board, but the
Right.
chances are less likely for that because you just have, how would I'd call them the diehards. She's been a diehard, Gerald's been a diehard, and so has Pat Danzy. They attend every single meeting, they are there. So from that angle, I know that the frustration from the advisory boards collectively was, we're an advisory board, we want the city to do this, but in the end, the city still does what they want, and they don't check with us.
Right.
It happened more frequently than not.
That
So-
loan is one perfect example.
Yeah.
I just read, because I missed that meeting evidently, that city council meeting. Well, what that paperwork said was not at all what we sent forward, and this is what happens consistently over and over and over. We would either push a motion forward and it would get ignored, or that sounds good, and then go on to the next thing.
Galen, I think you just answered your question.
So I mean, yes, I guess
Well,
so. It depends on the board. If we're all in tune, if we're all in sync, if we all want the same thing for Avon Park, then it should work. And we have a city manager who wants to push things forward. Then we can work together as a team and make things happen. But if we've got everybody vying for whatever it is that people in power do, then we're never going to succeed at anything. So
Yeah.
I'm not a power person. I don't want to work full time. I'm retired.
Well, you may not be a power person, but I guarantee you're a responsibility person.
Thank you.
And the difference, it's kind of goes one and the same. Some people, sit on this board. Some people seek this board for power. Some people seek this board because they want to help. But at any rate, you wind up with a lot of responsibility by sitting on this board. And that's why, unless we're sick or we're out of the country, 99.9% of the time, we're sitting here because there's a great deal of responsibility. By having an autonomous board, that responsibility is on that board. They're going to feel a lot more responsibility to show up and to do the things they're going to do, because right now, I know if I was sitting in your position, there's plenty of times where I would say, well, the main board will get it. What's the point, right? You just kind of let things go.
Well, no, I couldn't say that, but yeah, okay.
Well, a lot of
But it
people
happens.
have.
Yeah.
It just
Well, what's been difficult too is because of the negativity that we've faced in Avon Park and in politics and in all that's happened in the last several years, I could not get anybody to be on the board with me.
Right.
They like me, but they weren't going to get involved with Avon Park. That it was just too volatile. So I think we'll prove ourselves as a team, prove ourselves as a progressive council if we work together and make things happen. I suggest that the first step may be to combine that advisory board. Let that be step one. We don't have to do everything overnight. Step one, combine the advisory board, and let's see how that works, and then work with the council as it is. If when LaRue finds out that we've done everything properly, whatever.
I don't have a problem with that. I think that's
Yeah.
a real good
let's,
idea.
Let's start.
Yeah,
let's
that's a good
start
idea.
there, and if it works, and we see how it feels, and see what we can accomplish, and then maybe we can see the wisdom of having an autonomous board.
And the thing about the advisory board is that you would have to re-advertise the positions on it, because many of the current board members are no longer, they haven't been approved by this council since July of 2017.
Right.
So many of those individuals that continuously came to those board meetings were no longer authorized technically to be on them. So you would have to redo that. No matter what you do, you're going to have to find a whole new advisory board if you're going to combine all three into one advisory that reports to the city council. I still think that the autonomous board is the way to go, because even if you do the advisory one, you're still going to need staff. And at
We
that
need
point-
staff. That's
so,
the
what
bottom
comes
line.
first, the staff person or that? But either way, it hasn't worked the way it was.
Right.
I just
And
think that
nobody knows all that's involved in CRA. Nobody. Brenda and Glenda went with the CRA advisory folks to the last FRA conference. I say that y'all got your eyes open, didn't you?
Sure did.
That there is a bunch that's involved, and for us to do it correctly, and a lot of opportunities that we just don't know about because we don't know. And so if we have a staff person who is on top of CRA and involved with the FRA people, and they have RFPs come down every week, there's a newsletter that comes down, there's just a lot of stuff that we don't get the advantage of knowing, because we don't have a point person doing that. I'm involved, I'll admit, I'm involved in too many things. That's why I was trying to get out of CRA, but, my heart is here, so we'll just see what we can do. Whatever y'all decide, I'm a team player, I'm gonna help. Whether I'm on the advisory or not, I'll still send a note and say, hey, this is, did you see this today? This needs to be fixed.
We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Gerald?
Do I have to say who I am again?
Yes, you do.
Last time up here. Gerald Snell, 320 East Washington Street, Avon Park, Florida. First of all, like I had brought up during several meetings, we need a executive director. These people that are directors of CRAs, learn from conferences, they go to academies and get credentials that makes them eligible to be a director. It had been brought up about the past director. We pay him all this money, which I don't have paperwork in front of me, but I guess Maria would know about it, and I think it was referring to Wes Hoagland. Well, keep in mind that Wes Hoagland also didn't he do, besides CRA, he did P&Z?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did P&Z, so, that was never brought out, but it was said that, we paid him all this money, but it was just part-time from what I understood, but he also did P&Z.
Yeah, but that was paid out of the city.
Okay.
Right,
But I
so
think
it was $40,000, I believe, for the CRAs, and then it was about $6,000 out of the planning and zoning budget
Right.
to do that, and he was only one day a week or something. But yeah, it was a multitasked individual that had a unique skill set. He was familiar with economic development and planning and zoning, so it worked out for him.
And the other thing, too, was in dealing with advisory board, as far as budgets, we never really had an actual hands-on say on allocated how our money would be spent in the past few years. It was just pushed down our throat, and there it was. So, that's my concern.
Got it. Thank you. Barry, did you have something? Name and address, please.
My name's Barry Foster. I'm the news director for the Highlands Radio Group, 3750 US 27, Highway 27 in Sebring. I have all the fish in one barrel, so I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. I know two people probably know. Do you know how you got to where you are now? How you got the CRA situation as it is now? Do you know the history of this?
In what way?
Well, they had
some of
three
it.
separate CRAs, and your good friend Preston Colby came forward and said, by the way, that's not legal. So they took the three CRA boards, made them advisory boards, and collated the the power under the city council in an effort to, I use this word with all love, be fair. So that's how you are where you are now. I didn't know that everybody remembered Wes Hoagland was a CRA executive director here. You did have a CRA executive director in the past. So, and I will tell you that the city of Sebring, in point of fact, does approve the CRA members. They send them a list. I think it's no more than 3 recommended CRA city members, like they do for the airport authority. And in fact, the county commission appoints an airport authority member as well. Excuse me. But they do approve from a recommended list from the council. And knowing what I know about small government, I'm sure that most of the council members know the general consensus of the board of who they would like to have and who's like a really nice person, but probably not this time. So I just wanted to make sure that you all knew the history. If you don't know where you came from, you'll not know where you're going. That knew the history of. Sadly, I've been covering this board since 1986.
I think what started it was the Main Street CRA was the one board and it was autonomous. Then Southside became a board and they became autonomous, and no one at the time realized that you couldn't have 2 autonomous boards because you can only have 1 CRA board. But they didn't know that yet. Then the airport came about and then they were autonomous. You had 3 individual autonomous CRAs. And then at one point, when the plan was getting discussed to be extended because something was sunsetting, that's when I believe Preston came up and said, you can't do that. And they converted it into one, which was the city council, and left the 3 districts as advisories. So yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. They had 3 autonomous boards, and they weren't, and city staff ran them at the time. So it's come back. CRA, there's only one still. It's the city council.
Right.
And here we're just trying to move it there. I like Galen's idea. I think that having one advisory board with all 3 is okay, and then they let them decide if it works. He hires somebody and it seems to be going okay, then great. But that means that everything they do is still going to come to this board.
Right.
I just don't want to be rubber stamping or doing things without their consent, because otherwise it's defeating the whole purpose all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be incumbent on city staff to make sure that whatever comes to the CRA board has already been vetted by the advisory board, and not be rammed down this board's throat at the last minute with a special meeting with a special agenda, and they don't have a clue.
Right.
That's what's happened in the past, and I just want to prevent that.
Yeah. I think good staff can prevent that sort of thing from happening.
I can
obviously.
assure you that won't happen with me.
Right. So it sounds to me like the first thing we need to do is start looking at a staff person. So if it's not going to be a full-time position only on the CRAs, we would be asking the city manager, is there a possible work-together situation on that of a part-time employee that you need that could fulfill both positions?
I am working on that as we speak. I've got someone already on staff that I think would be very good at adding some duties to that plate. And I'm not prepared to make a recommendation right now, but he and I have been in detailed discussions about his skill sets and what he can do additionally for the city of Alabama.
Okay. So I would ask the board, how do we want to handle it? Do we want to wait till the next meeting and hear David's suggestion, or what?
I would like to see whether or not the advisory board chairs can meet with David and kind of mull over the skill set that this individual has and see whether or not it fits what their program of work is going to detail. This person's going to have to be a public speaker. It's going to have to be someone that's familiar with economic development, and as well as Florida Statute 119, 165. Also be familiar with airport operations and things like that, and grants, predominantly grants, because that individual is also going to be the one that's going to be piggybacking on other efforts that the city's doing. Would be essential for an individual from the city, because then they know what the city's budget is all about as well as theirs. So anyway, I think that they just need to hash it out with David and let it go from there. Let it evolve. I think that they can evolve it.
Let me ask a question.
Go ahead.
Hey, Jerry, would we have to do any policies and procedures changes in order for this process to go forward?
Policies and procedures.
Guidelines, ordinances, whatever they're
Ordinance,
called.
well, yeah, we have to
Ordinance?
change the ordinance.
So wouldn't that be the first step that we would
Well,
talk about
that's
doing?
if
Just
you
what
want to
said.
change the makeup of the board. We're just talking about the staff person right this minute.
Right now, they're just, you know,
Which is like what we used to have. We had a staff person for 10 dozen years.
Right.
having that anchor staff person for the CRA is fundamental. I mean, it was so much nicer having one person who handled all the CRA business every time we came forward. And since, the staff has changed so much over the years, it's been a little jumbled, a little stressed, as you can imagine. But having that back would definitely be a good thing. As far as approving a person to expend CRA money on, wouldn't that have to take place at a CRA board meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're going to approve the arrangement that you propose or look for someone else, that would have to be done at a CRA meeting. So do you think you'll have a recommendation by next meeting?
Possibly.
Okay. Well, whatever meeting that you have that person at, we should have a CRA meeting before that meeting so that we can.
Our next meeting is next Monday,
Right.
the 11th, so no.
Okay.
I think I can get the CRA meeting in there in the meantime to meet with all the chairs and all that. I don't think I can do that by the 11th.
Okay.
Southside is in Southside schedule this Wednesday.
I don't know.
Well, we're talking about meeting with the chairs of the board, not the actual board itself, the advisory board. It's just the chairs.
Okay.
So we've got two of them sitting here tonight. I'm sure you can locate the other one.
Okay, I'll give you a possible on the 11th.
All right. Well, if you do, just make sure you call a CRA meeting before our regular meeting. However long you think it'll take.
5:30?
Yeah, 30 minutes. Something like that.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got that on the upcoming. What else for the CRA?
That's it.
Okay, so in the meantime, we've got the LaRue is going to be looking into the memo as well as what it would take to actually make this come about. And we have hopefully a staff suggestion from the city manager in the near future. Is there anything else on the CRA issue? Okay. Moving on, street signs. Brenda, is that you?
That wasn't me.
Street signs wasn't you?
We,
We removed several members or several items.
I don't know where the concern came from, but I'm assuming it's because there are some street signs that are still showing some damage from the hurricane that was here a year ago.
Okay.
And that's something that Robert and I have discussed at length in the last couple of weeks to try to bring that back to the front burner and start working on that. And he's already started on some of that.
Okay.
How high do they have to be from the bottom of the sign to the ground?
Robert?
Because, I know several of them, when I go running, I could hit them with my head. They're right here.
I don't know about the bottom, from the top to the ground, it's supposed to be 7 foot.
From the top of the sign to the bottom?
Mhm.
That seems awfully low.
That's, MOT.
Because there's some stop signs that are my height.
There is some that are real low. I am waiting on the material to come in. So I'll get
Mr.
the
Hodge?
poles replaced.
Are you going to move them to be higher, or are you going to
Oh, yes.
keep them
Oh,
at
yes. We're
7?
gonna put them back to where it's supposed to be.
Name and address, please.
Alfred Hodge, 18 West Thomas Street. From the top of the ground to the bottom of the sign, it's supposed to be 7 feet. That's state statute.
Okay.
That's the regulations on that.
Appreciate it.
But if you make them taller, I don't know, but there's at least one sign out there that's 5'9", because I'm 5'9", and I'll run into it.
Yes, we have several of them like that. They were like that before the storm. We're slowly trying to get everything up to where they're supposed
Yeah.
to be. Like I said, I've got more material ordered. As soon as it gets here, we'll go back on the signs and start getting everything raised up where it's supposed to be.
Got
So
it.
it would be helpful if the public just kind of said this one here, that one there.
Oh,
I mean,
that
I
would
know
be
about
excellent.
maybe 2 or 3, and that's
You know, I
about it.
rely a lot on the public because I can't be everywhere all the time. So I do rely a lot on the public to let us know when something is damaged.
Where should they send those requests to?
They can send them to City Hall. They can bring them up to the.
Are they numbered like the
No,
No? Okay.
They're not numbered.
Just intersection.
Sorry about that. No, they're not numbered. What they can do is they can call City Hall. Yeah, they can go on the website, put it on the website. Their best bet is going to be to just call City Hall and just talk to somebody at UT Billing, and they'll make a work order for me.
Got it. Any other questions on street signs?
Well, kind of sort of down that line. How about numbers on houses throughout the city. That's a little different, but not a lot different.
How about them?
That's code enforcement there.
Well, we'll get down to we're going to get to code enforcement.
That's not on here
No.
tonight.
It's not on here.
Huh?
We
Was it on the
talked
last one?
No.
It should be. Anyway,
I don't
Next
see
time.
code enforcement on my list.
no.
But I thought, when I talked about this right here, several things that I had mentioned was going to come under code enforcement, and that was not there.
So you're talking about people who do not have numbers on their
Yeah, I
homes.
mean, it's unbelievable how many houses in this town is not numbered.
Right.
And,
Or you
That's-
can't see them because there's something
yeah,
growing on it.
whatever the reason be, we need to put a little bit of teeth in making sure that's taken care of.
Well, 911 would want that for sure.
That is a public safety issue, and we'll get code enforcement.
It's kind of hard for an insurance agent, too.
Yes, sir.
We get to the root of the problem now, I see.
No, really, I mean, they're just not out there.
Shouldn't spend too much time on a non-agenda issue.
Yeah.
That's for special meeting. Even normal meeting, you could use.
You got to talk in that mic, I can't hear you.
I said we shouldn't spend too much time on something that's not on the agenda, given it's a special meeting.
That's not under code enforcement. We're not going to talk about code enforcement.
It's not on
Yeah.
here.
Not
Code
on here.
enforcement's not on here.
I can see that, but it was supposed to be.
Okay.
Can't help it now.
We'll add it to the next one.
Right. All right. Is there anything else on street signs? Seeing none. South side street lighting?
That's me.
All right, finally. I got one right.
Yeah, the reason why I asked this to be put on the agenda because I have been approached by several residents on the south side about, and I talked with
Robert?
Robert, thank you,
Yep.
about it as well. And there are several streets, and I can only name a few, that don't have any street lighting on it, and it hasn't been that way.
You talking about a light's been out or there's no light
There's
at all?
no light whatsoever. The area is completely dark. And one of those areas is Alice Nelson Street under the Underturned Way. It never wasn't a light there when I was a little girl, and it's still not there.
Yep.
So, but that's a very, very dark area, and the citizens asked me to ask what would have to happen in order to get a street light in that area.
Don't you just have to contact Duke Energy and is it up to the council or can the city manager do that?
We can probably do that because that comes under the threshold of.
Yeah, I think it's like $10 a month or something like that.
Normally $10 a month for a light.
Yeah.
And the other area was
I'm sorry,
on-
Miss Gray, would you give me that address?
Yeah, it's on it's not an address. It's just under the Underturned area of Alice Nelson Street and Strong Avenue.
Okay.
And the next area was Palmer and Green Street. Palmer and Green Street. And I informed those citizens that I would be bringing that up at this meeting. So that's the reason why I asked that on there.
Yep. And of course, if anyone else has any other areas that they
That's
want to see a
totally
light,
dark.
they can send that to the city manager and
Yep.
he'll evaluate it at the time.
We'll do an
Okay.
evaluation on it and see what we can do.
Thank you.
Anything else on the street lighting?
Nothing else on the street lighting.
Anybody? Alfred? Name and address, please.
Alfred Hodge, 18 West Thomas. Just want to find out something about the lights that's recycling, or the cycles that they're going off and on.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything we can do with something on Main Street?
On which lights? Are you talking about the street lights
There's-
or the ones
there's a-
that's on the ground level?
There's a lot of street lights that's completely out. Some cycles and some don't
You're
Right.
talking on the mall or in the sidewalks?
on the mall.
I think
Now,
that,
this is the on the wooden poles now.
we have wooden poles on Main Street?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's mighty dark on there, and I see a lot of people walking, but it's,
It's pretty dark
It's
at-
pretty
yeah.
dark.
Each pole has a number, does it not?
Yeah,
Yes.
those are Duke Energy lights.
Right. So
But who
basically,
maintains those?
Duke Energy does.
Duke Energy does.
The
but
ones on Main Street they maintain?
Not the ones on the ground level, only the ones on
yeah,
the poles.
Not the old timey ones, but the high ones that are on the regular street lights.
Yeah.
What we'll do is we'll go ahead and do an assessment on it. I'll look at some of them tonight, and Robert will too,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll see what we do. We'll go ahead and make a report to Duke Energy on it.
Yep.
You know
What we
what?
used to do, we used to get the numbers off of it and call into Florida Power at that time.
Yeah.
And also we'd take a ribbon and put around it and they'll know that that's the one that's bad.
Well, we used to also have the police department on weekends and at nights that would keep an eye out on the lights. So unless we have staff that drives at night, or
Right.
you or one of us that are here, then you really don't know it, you know?
Well,
So we
used to-
really rely on the public for that information.
If we had someone on call, for on call that night or something, let them do a riding instead of just sitting there waiting.
Each pole has got a number on it.
Yes.
We'll go ahead and get those, we'll take care of it.
Okay.
Actually, we don't even need the numbers anymore. There's a website, all we gotta do is get the address. There is a website, we go on there, and you can tag the pole on the
Anybody.
map. Anybody can do that.
Anybody.
It's open to the general public.
Well, there
You
you
can
go.
tag the pole, and they'll come out and fix it.
Problem solved.
See, I just learned something too.
But while we're on that subject of street lights, I mean, how does the effort of Christmas lights kick in? Would that be something under this heading here, or not? Street lighting? Or is that something different?
Of Christmas lights?
Yeah.
Are you wanting to talk about Christmas decorations?
Why not? Yeah,
Please, let's
right.
do it some other time.
Okay. Well, all I'm saying
It's not on
is it
this
has,
list.
huh?
It's not on this list.
No, it's not on this list, but I'd like to add that eventually as well, because it is a,
That will be under holiday decorations.
yes, thank you. You have no idea how important that is.
It
Yes,
is.
I do.
Anything else on streetlights?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't want to come back up there, but can Robert ride through the new CDBG area on County Kennedy Lane? Is a couple of those lights are out?
We'll get it taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
All right, clam truck trash pickup.
That's me as well.
All right, what you got?
I have had several citizens complain that when the clam truck picks up the stuff, and I think this was brought up at several, is that what it's called, the clam truck?
Yes.
The one with the
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
Okay. They leave a lot of trash
Amen.
in the road, also in the area that they're picking up from. So is there anything that we can do about that?
Yes, there is. And I will talk to Robert about that tomorrow, and we'll see if we maybe even need to do some retraining with our people. They used to have pitchforks on the truck. Do they still have them?
They still do.
Okay.
But they
Do
don't
know how to
use them. They don't use them.
Well, here's the story behind that. We were told by a prior city manager, we are not to pick up anything. We just go with the clam truck, pick up what you can of it, and leave the rest of it. And that's what they were trained to do. So
Okay. So
there is
how
a
do we
lot.
go
There
back
is
to
a
the
lot of
way that we
retraining
were
that has
doing
to
it?
be done to the guy on the clam truck.
Yep.
I've
Okay.
already talked to him about it, and I've already told him that he better get ready because it's coming.
All right.
He's going to have to start picking it up.
Okay.
Hi, Anna Marie Feeney, 234 East Camphor Street, Avon Park. The clam trucks also, what they're doing is on certain blocks and areas, those clam trucks, they slam them down on ground, not concrete or anything, on ground. And they wind up also taking up and making huge holes in the easement.
Please
And-
report that to us when that happens, and we will correct it.
Yeah, well, I just want to make a suggestion, because the clam trucks, they, the way it was explained to me is every 3 houses on a residential block, they have their little place where they can put all their stuff. And then the clam truck comes, picks it up, takes it away. That's the green stuff. My suggestion is, if that is still the case, maybe the city can turn around and put like a 7x7 concrete square on that part of the easement, so that way when the clam truck comes, they're not yanking out tons of dirt every single time.
I can absolutely guarantee you that concrete pad would be busted up within
Yeah,
6 months.
that's true too.
We do not have community dump piles.
Yeah.
Everybody's
So-
supposed to put your
Stuff.
stuff on your right
Right,
away.
that's
and
what
we
I
pick it
thought
up.
also, but someone told me
If you have
that.
a community pile, the problem with that is
It's-
anybody will come dump on it.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you have this big humongous pile,
Yeah.
and we don't know who's
Well,
charged to clean it
on
up.
my block, we have a gaping hole in
And
one
is it a
section.
community pile as well?
Yeah,
See,
from,
and whose
from
whose
what
front
my
yard
neighbors
is
were
that in?
told, from what my neighbors were told, they were supposed to bring all their green stuff to that one section, and that's what they've been doing.
They better
the
not
way-
do that in
that's not
my
a city
front
policy.
yard. I mean,
Yeah,
I
that's
just
not
think
the way the
that's not
city policy
appropriate.
reads.
Okay,
Yeah, that's not
so
a
then
city-
I'll let them know that, so that way that'll stop happening. But there's a huge hole on East Camphor
That hole
Street.
has been there for quite a while.
Yes.
We do not have the same clam truck driver we used to have. This new clam truck driver, he's a little easier than the
Yeah.
old one was. So
Then maybe
it's
after
getting
all the
better.
stuff gets pulled out of there, we could fill it back in.
Yeah, it's getting better.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on the clam truck?
No, that's all I had on the clam truck. Does anybody else got anything else?
I think it was addressed. We either dig too much or not enough.
Yep. Okay, item number 8, ethics training.
That was mine as well.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to make sure, I know we all had, in the years that I've been up here, had to go through a ethics training, and I just wanted to make sure that we all still do that.
Yes.
I
Is it
strongly-
scheduled? Oh, go ahead.
I strongly suggest that we go back to having Jerry give us the ethics training here and all do it at the same time like we had done in previous years instead of all having to try to find our own training. It was much
Or
easier.
going to Bartow to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we went there a
Yeah, I've
couple
been doing it
times.
for Zolfo Springs because they don't want to drive to Haines City and Bowling Green most of the time. Tens as well, so I'd be happy to have one here if you'd like.
So could we schedule that, or could you ask
Yeah.
them to do that,
You
Garrett,
want
or
to contact
however
me
they
and
wanna
set
do
up a
Is
it?
it 4
schedule?
hours long or something?
Supposed to be a 4-hour class, yeah.
Do we want to invite any other cities?
How many
like
hours?
Lake Placid, maybe?
4 hours.
No.
4 hour
Yeah.
course.
Do you want to do it one evening? You want to do that a Saturday? What do you want to do?
I'll bring the donuts
If
Saturday.
it's, if
I
it's
ain't
for,
doing
now,
that
that's
on
not a public
Saturday.
meeting, that's a training session.
Yeah,
But we're all meeting together.
it doesn't matter to me. You all pick, because I can do Saturday if you wish, or during the week, because it's 4 hours, it's a half a day.
But don't you have to notice it as a public meeting because we're all
I
together?
do. Well, you don't have to, but I do, simply because I notice it as a workshop, and that let's make sure in advance we remember that. Notice it as a workshop simply because something might come up with regard to city business, especially since I'm doing the instruction and you're asking the questions. If it was somebody from somewhere else, they wouldn't have any idea what you're talking about, but it does occur, and so for all my city stuff, I always have them do it as a workshop.
Okay. But do we want to do it early one night?
Well, if it's a 4-hour session, can you break it up in 2 and 2, or does it all have to be in one night?
It's better just to go ahead and get it done.
Can you
and
do it at like 4
God, we
to
don't
8?
want to be here till 9
I have
o'clock.
done it at 4. I can do it whatever time you want. I mean,
Then we
as long as
basically
we're not
just
going
meet a
past
little
midnight.
earlier. I mean, we don't
I'm just
normally
being
get out of here.
facetious. We've been here at 9:45 one night, so I'm just.
Let's
joking.
start
I
it
don't
at 8.
care.
Why not?
I've been
What
here.
time?
I've been here after midnight.
If
So.
it's a workshop, then we could start
so is
earlier, but it's
Brenda.
up to you guys.
And
I'm
Brenda's
I'm
been here
game.
after
I would
midnight
just
as
simply
well.
suggest we do it on a Monday, like every other meeting that we have, and we do it at 4 p.m. Get out of here at 8 p.m.
As long as it's not Tuesday, because those are when I have my other meetings.
On a Monday night, that's in between our regular meetings.
Yeah. He and I will get together and throw out some dates and
Yeah,
send those to you.
because
Yep.
It depends on which Monday it is that I could make it here at 4 o'clock, but I'll do everything I can.
Is there a
Okay.
different day of the week that's better for you?
No, I don't get off till 5.
Every day?
We'll give you. We have plenty of time, so we'll give you several dates.
Oh, okay, that'll be fine.
Well, 5:30 probably would be better, then that way no one's rushing to get here if they have to leave work
What
at
I'll do
5.
is I'll get with Jerry after the meeting or sometime this
Okay.
week. I'll come up with some dates and I'll email them to y'all and y'all tell me what'll work and then we'll just set up something. Now, do you want staff here? Do you want me here to be here at the meeting as well?
Who's required to do the ethics training?
Yeah, the city manager's not yet,
Okay.
but we will eventually, I'm sure.
Okay.
We're on their
But it
hit
wouldn't
list.
hurt him, because, I mean, I'm just thinking, what
Right.
what we know he should know.
As much as he has been on commissions and so on,
Well,
he
yeah.
probably knows quite a bit himself already.
Practice makes
I
perfect.
normally, like I said, I did meet with him earlier and talk to him just to make sure that it's like, okay, you know what you're doing.
And what about the CRAs, for that matter? Any of-
Absolutely. I mean, they're not required to be there, but it's good for them to know.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily a 4-hour session that they need. They don't need like a
Will the
quickie.
meeting need to be recorded?
Yes, absolutely, because it's a workshop.
Okay. Yep.
Are you gonna give us certificates
Looks
and
like
everything?
we'll be here for it then.
What about
He gets
P&Z? Should we do it for P&Z as well?
That's up to you. I mean, this is not required of them. And I
think we
used to do like a 1-hour session, a quickie, and then include all the boards, but they never showed up. So I doubt they'll show up for a 4-hour session that's
Yeah.
not required.
If it's required for us and not for them, and it's a workshop, they can attend if they so choose.
Yeah, that's what
There
we
It's
you
look
not
at.
a requirement.
Anybody can attend if they wish, because it's a workshop.
Okay. Is that it for the ethics training?
That's it.
All right. Airport FBO.
I wanted to ask Mr. Flowers if he's going to be able to put out another, it's meeting with the advisory board for the airport and getting their input. And I don't know how to go about that when there's no staff to conduct meetings with the airport board. You know, there's an advisory CRA board at the airport and there's an airport board. There's two separate boards, and they somehow were combined into a CRA board so that they wouldn't have to have two separate meetings. But if they can't meet as a CRA, perhaps they can meet as their regular, but I don't know if their terms have expired or not. But I know that Mr. Danzy has I've spoken to him. I know David has spoken to him as well, and they're really anxious to get some things going on at the airport, particularly someone to run the airport now that we don't have any manager to do so. And I just don't know where we are with that. And part of the big picture is the FBO to get that marketed, advertised, with the police not being there anymore and other businesses vacating there as well. We need to let aviation-related businesses know that it's open for business. And I don't know if we need to do a fixed-base operator to manage it. If Sebring, I don't know if the airport in Sebring has an individual. There are companies that do these things.
Yeah, they've got an airport authority.
Right.
I don't know if they have an FBO operator. Do you have
Garrett,
something? Yeah.
wasn't, at one time, a while back, wasn't there a study done or something like that? And-
There was not a
what
study.
was
I believe
it?
it was a request for FBOs, and we did not have
No takers.
no takers at that point because there wasn't enough territory to rent out for one, to make money for the airport, and a couple other issues. I believe you guys had a meeting with Amherst, did you not?
And the reason why I asked it that, I never saw that report. Is that something that you can share with us, of the findings of that?
I don't know that there was a report. They just met with the city, did they not? Yeah.
There was a report or there wasn't a report?
Didn't they get paid a bunch of money for that, though?
Yeah,
Didn't it have deliverables?
sure did.
I think we did pay them consulting fees.
Like
for that.
16,000 or something?
And they did not do a
That much.
report? I think it was a report because I think someone came up and told us about it, but they never gave us a copy of the report.
I'll get with Amherst and see if they can provide that to me.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Did you have any plans at this point
I
for?
have spoken to Robert and Josh both about seeing if we can actually put a staffed person out there, someone to do maintenance, someone to kind of assist with some of the fuel issues. I just learned Friday that it takes 10 days to mow that property out there with the huge 16-foot batwing mower. I had no idea it was that much. So I've got some ideas on that I've kind of kicked around with Robert and Josh about if we ever talk to someone about possibly mowing the essential areas, the fence line and the runway area around the lights and stuff around that and around the buildings, but get somebody to come out there and bale hay off of that. Have we ever looked at that avenue before?
We used to do that.
They used to
Yeah,
sell it,
they
yeah.
used to,
They
yeah.
did that one time.
Richard McKenzie used to have a trade-out with the city, and he would get basically free rent, and in return, he would maintain the airport.
Yeah.
And he had bales of hay, and then he'd sell them. There also was a grove out there at one point, I believe, but
A
anyway, a little bit of a
nursery in the
grove.
back.
Is that right?
Yeah, but at some point,
Gilly
there
had a
was
nursery
baled
back there.
hay out there. I don't know what the income derived off of it was.
Well, I mean,
You won't be getting much income, but I know Zolfo Springs, their effluent spray field, they have somebody that basically breaks even. They basically,
Yeah, you would
they
know.
mow it,
He
they
would
mow it
know.
and keep it clean.
Well, and that's what I'm looking at for, a couple times a year, let somebody bale the hay on the thing and let them have it,
Fertilize it and bale hay.
Just let them take it out there. We can take care of the mowing the essential areas around there to keep it FAA compliant. But that was just an idea that we were kicking around today.
Okay. Alfred, do you have something?
Alfred Hodge, 18 West Thomas Street. Whenever I was here, every January, we burned the whole airport.
You what? Burned it?
Yes, and what we did was we had a training with Highlands Lake,
Jesus.
Sebring, or West Sebring,
Mm-hmm.
and our fire department. Excuse me. And they would go out and set it on fire, and they would train out. And this is why the 3 fire departments trained on it. Then we mowed it. You said 10 days?
With the batwing mower, that's what they said it takes, 10 days to mow all that.
18 hours.
How many people?
One. Me. I did it in 18 hours with a white shirt on.
Yeah, was that a Ferrari engine on that thing then?
How many acres?
But anyway, and also with the baling of the hay and stuff,
400 acres.
Larry Albritton and Jim Goza went out and they took care of everything on that. They would bale it, mow it, and bale it up. What was left, that's where you come in with your hours, with your, to go in there. Once they mowed it or took the hay off of it, we'd go in and mow the whole thing.
In 18 hours.
In 18
Yeah,
hours.
but that non-baling part was what was taking the 10 days. Yeah.
Yeah, but
But
let me
now,
ask
here's
you.
something else too that we did also. We used community service people that was doing the community service on the weekends and stuff. Some of a grown person now. I'm not talking about.
Did they
and-
do the baling of the hay when you worked for the city?
Yes,
Okay,
I
so
did.
Richard McKenzie did that, or did you roll the hay?
Yes, I did.
You did it, okay.
See, I thought this was a brand new idea that I'd come up for y'all. I thought this was forward thinking, and here it's already been done.
Nothing new under the sun, David.
But we used on the weekend, the people that was doing community service. And we would go out, give them a key, fuel it up and everything, and let them go at it.
How often would you mow it?
Once a month.
Once a month. Okay.
Now, in the
During the summer
wintertime.
months, during the winter months, you wouldn't have to do that.
No.
Yeah.
And how often are we mowing it now, David?
Whenever
8 days,
somebody
8 days a
complains.
month?
I think the last time was in October,
In October.
I think.
Okay.
So is it like out of control right now? Is it?
It's not growing much in the wintertime. It's shaggy, but it's not this high. It's not anywhere near that, but spring's coming.
Yeah. Now, I know you went out and met with some of the airport people. Did they express how often they would like to see it done, or how often it needs to be done to be safe, or?
There were safety concerns from this one consultant that we met last week about the frequency of the mowing.
Just Amherst, or?
No, it wasn't Amherst. This was that consultant that.
FDOT sends out a consultant that checks safety assessments, the security
So you're saying
assessments.
frequency as in they're doing it too much, or they're not doing it enough?
Not enough.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you checked with any other municipalities to see what they're doing?
I have not.
Okay. That might shed some light as to what's the most cost effective, particularly if they're not a very large city.
Right.
You have
Closest
some-
one here would be, I guess, Wauchula. I mean, I know Sebring has one, but it's mostly concrete.
Wauchula has one runway.
Okay.
Lake
Ours
Wales
is-
as well.
Ours is a little bigger.
Okay. All right. So,
But getting back to the airport FBO, if there is a report of some kind, I know that a lot of money was spent on that. I'm pretty sure they probably have something in writing. If not, then they should produce one after all the money that was spent. They had to pull data from somewhere and have evidence of it.
yeah.
But I don't know what that's supposed to yield. Other than no one came. I mean, who did the actual procurement of that at the time? Do you know? Was it a city initiated?
Council
Did they go
did it.
through RFP or RFQ on that?
Council
It's
approved
board,
it.
yeah.
Yep.
So, and then no one submitted. Maybe it needs to change where there's a trade-off. Because I don't know that the airport's gonna be able to afford someone to run the airport. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
pumping gas and taking payments, the rain gauges, and what else? Is it gonna be a job description for someone, or?
I think we should look for the report first. I mean,
And-
see if you have
This is
suggestions.
where you need to decide as a council, if this is a public service that we're supposed to provide, you're not going to expect to break even on every single public service that you provide. Everything's not going to be profitable. If this is one of the priorities that the city has, then we need to do what we need to do it, whether or not it makes money or not. If it's a public service identified that way.
Yeah. Give some-
The FBO at the Sebring Regional Airport.
Name and address, please.
I'm sorry, Galen Thomas, 703 West Winterford Street. I spoke with them one time when I was out there, the FBO, and they they're a big corporation, and just one of their arms is at Sebring. And they have enough people working part-time that could use more hours. And I talked to them at the time about how would it work if you would work at another airport as well. You know, the same company, but share the same staff in two close places. The staff said that would work. And I do know that Pat Danzy has reached out to Mike Willingham, but I don't know where that went. But I know with your powers of personality, you know, you might want to reach out to Mike as well. Because that would just, if they've got staff, people that are part-time, they could hire them as full-time and half the time work in Avon Park and half the time, you know, whatever. So it's just, it might be an opportunity for them to grow and help us out.
Yeah.
Another option is privatization. If you decide it's the public service, you know, it's not good, but you need to keep the airport. You can't sell it, obviously, because you've got grants and so on. But you know, privatization is always an option as well, where they make income and run it, but you own it and get like a rent off of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there was a couple people around town who had tossed that idea around, who had done similar things at other airports. And
David, is all this stuff where the police department was located, is that all still in there?
I met with Mr. Lister Friday on his last day, and he turned in all of his gear to me. And so, yes, there is some things in there that I have to get turned over to the sheriff. But my intent is to try to have that office completely cleared out by the end of this month.
So are you turning over computers as well to the sheriff? We're keeping that, you're just giving them
yeah, a lot of that stuff
law enforcement stuff.
Yeah. We'll just reallocate it to other departments.
So what's it staffed right now? I mean, the FBO has someone from what time to what time, and are they on Saturdays as well? You have code enforcement in there.
This still hasn't changed as of now.
So is code enforcement there on Saturdays, or are they out driving around?
Both.
I think they're there a half a day on Saturday. I think. I don't know that.
As far as I know, there's one officer out on the streets, and I think Ashley's in on the office from 8 to 12.
And she serves dual purpose. She does code enforcement, and then if pilots have questions and things, then
She answers as best she can.
okay. I mean, personally, what I would like to see is what the people who are involved in aviation have to say.
mm-hmm.
You know, I think we need to possibly have a meeting that is solely focused on the airport issue and bring out everything. So hopefully we have, we don't have to plan it yet. We can see if we have that report from the Amherst and kind of see where that takes us. But, you know, in the next...
They'd have to see that too, I would think.
Right. Yeah, maybe in the next month or two, we could put a meeting together and talk about just the airport.
Special meeting with just that as a topic.
Exactly. And then obviously the aim would be to invite all of the board members out there and anyone who's interested in Avon Park Aviation to come give us their ideas of what they'd like to see and what they expect the town to do.
Oh, they'd jump all over that. They wouldn't want to wait 2 months.
Yep.
I think the sooner the better, actually.
I'll move forward as quickly as possible on that.
Alrighty. Anything else in the airport FBO?
No, so what we're getting on that meeting, would that be just a meeting here with the council and then they'd come up and do their spiel, or is this something that you would meet at the airport with them, or how?
I would say here.
Here?
Yep.
And you would make that the city council meeting so
Yep.
that it would just be focused on the
Just
on the
like
airport?
tonight, but
Okay.
with the sole focus of
Just-
that.
I like that a
issue.
lot. I think that gives them the time they need to express themselves. And if the consultants can be here too, that would be great.
Yeah. And they can, you know, talk to us about maintenance, what they expect for maintenance, and you know, we can kind of make some plans there and staffing and the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
Anything else in the airport FBO?
Mm-mm.
Brickell Building.
I'm sorry, never mind,
Oh,
go on. No. I'll save it.
Brickell Building it is.
Well, you know, at the last meeting, we talked about it, and then I said, let's remove it because we talked about it, and then everyone said, just leave it there. So what's the current status on the mold issue? Have you been able to contact anybody on that yet? And
I have a meeting at 9:30 tomorrow morning.
Yay.
With a mold remediation expert. who is going to do a tour with me and probably Josh and Robert. I talked to him for about 10 minutes on the phone, and he knows what he's talking about. Seems to know what he's talking about. He's been working in the North Florida area with Hurricane Michael issue for quite a while, but this man is actually from Frostproof. So I'm catching him tomorrow morning before he goes up to North Florida again tomorrow afternoon. So with that, I believe that we can start making some pretty good inroads. Personally, I was in the building last week. Yes, there's some issues, but I don't see that it's as awful as everybody has been leading me to believe that it is. I think there's some things that can be fixed and fixed rather quickly. One of the items we've already done where we had water coming on the inside of the building because there was a hole on the south side of the building by the Southern Charm restaurant. Water was coming in behind the gutter, going inside the building, down that wall, right into her place. Yeah, that was a problem. We found it. We were inside the building, saw the daylight through it. We'll seal it up. I think it was sealed today, I think. I haven't verified that yet. That being the case, that particular issue is solved. So hopefully we're there. We're getting there.
And then regarding the insurance letter, how does that?
I have not gotten a call back from the insurance guy yet. I left 2 messages for him. I will try him again tomorrow. But he is open to discussion. It wasn't like I'm going to give you $100,000 and that's all I'm going to do. His issue was whether or not it was some of the damage was before the storm, some of it was after the storm. He didn't know. He'd had several conversations with Robert Flores and some other people and all that. I found some pictures that were taken before Hurricane Irma of the inside of the building and the condition of the roof. That should be very helpful to him in helping make his decision. He hadn't seen those pictures yet. So we found those in a file that were done in 2016, I believe.
Okay.
So with that, I think once I hear from the mold remediation man what he thinks on this thing, we might be able to get a better handle on what we can do and how quick we can do it.
Does he have to be subcontracted through anybody, or is he
He is
sold?
the building contractor.
So there's no 10% markup here.
He would do it all, basically. So with that, I'll wait and see what he says tomorrow morning. I don't expect a report back from him tomorrow because he was on his way back up to North Florida. But I would think within a couple of weeks he should be able to give me something pretty substantial.
On the Brickell building on the Lake Avenue side, there's a window that's been boarded up for nearly 2 years. And our code says that you can only have a boarded up window for 30 days.
I guess we better fix that then.
Yeah, I think there was some damage to that, and I don't know if it was vandalism. Remember someone drove around with a BB gun and they shot up a bunch of stuff. There's several buildings on Main Street that were affected, and I think it just got covered. But anyway, that window, the wood needs to come out. We can't be finding other people, I guess, when we have that issue.
We're in violation of our own code enforcement?
No.
I never.
Honestly, I think it's an
never.
oversight. You want to protect the building nonetheless, and I didn't know if it was a water damage issue, and maybe that's what it is, David. Maybe it's a water damage issue, and you have to have the wood there. But nonetheless, I think it just needs to be looked at.
Okay.
And then the other thing on the Brickell building is, on the facade of the Lake Avenue side, there's always...
Is that upstairs or downstairs?
Downstairs, it faces, it's right on the corner of Lake and Main on the Lake Avenue side.
Okay.
Also, on the whole side right there, there's areas for businesses to put their business name in there.
Yes.
And some of those have peeled off or kind of look kind of icky or whatever, but I would encourage those businesses to still be able to do that. People need to know where they are if they're going to go down Lake Avenue or whatnot.
Is that something that we let them just put their own sign and logo on, or is that something that we do?
They have to fit, but everyone gets one slot. Some people have two. Look, I personally don't care if a business wants to advertise right on there, but if someone else moves in and they need space and there's no more space on it, then someone's going to have to retool theirs. But that's going to be up to you how you want to work that. There are still slots that are available.
That is a city sign.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a city sign. They've painted their own
On a city-owned building.
on a city-owned building. But if you look at the building, it was intended for that because they kind of bubble out a little bit. They're like framed.
Right.
And I think it's good because we need to know that those businesses are there. So if it has a little arrow or whatever, good. But some of those businesses aren't there anymore, so that needs to be
Right.
painted over.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Make
would
room for others.
strongly recommend you limit them to one.
Yeah,
one
I would
spot.
too. I mean, some have two, but, you know, parking in the rear, a little sign that says parking in the rear, something would be helpful as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I know that's minutia, but it's helpful for the businesses.
Sure it is.
I do appreciate the word. I do appreciate it. Anything else on the Burkle building?
No.
Community center.
That's not on my list.
Oh, it was added to this one here. I gave you the
Yeah, I know, but
paperwork.
code enforcement's not on my list, and I was told that it would be, and it's not. You know, I spoke last week about the garbage cans, and you told me that we'll talk about that at the special meeting.
Did I say that?
Yes, you did. But
Or,
I'll let
or
it
did
go
I
this
say at the
time.
next regular meeting?
No, I don't think so.
Regular.
But I'll let it go this time.
All right. We can handle that in the parking lot, Stanley.
Well, after tonight, we can add what we need for the next meeting, and you can call David for that because it's a regular meeting. Okay, so the community center, I want to commend the Peter Powell Roberts Museum and all the work that they do upstairs. I attended recently and this has to do with the community center. I attended an event there that they sponsored, and I don't know how many people came, but it was pretty well attended. The parking lot was packed.
Nice.
It was nice. They had great food, which unfortunately I got there too late and didn't get to eat it, but it was catered by Gerald Snell actually, and the food was gone in the first couple of hours. So it was a very good program, and I would encourage them to do them more frequently and do an expose on the artists that have stuff upstairs. I had asked city staff as well to provide the community center expenses, costs, and revenue sheet here, just so that we could have an idea of what is spent at this particular building. And I did get information from David that the machinery and equipment and furniture, the $15,000 expense that you see on your cost was a one-time expense, so it doesn't really reflect accurately the costs per year on this building.
It's air conditioner.
Right, and then the air conditioner, that was the account 4610, I'm guessing, repair and maintenance services, building repair and maintenance for $7,900. So between the 15,000 and the 7,900, those two amounts are not typical. So therefore, the cost still exceeds the revenues in the building. And you know, we currently rent it out. I believe Savitri provided other information. It gets rented out maybe 52 times a year. It takes staff about 20 minutes each time to do it. This little report here is kind of teeny weeny, so it's a little difficult to read. And
That's actually for the hangers.
I'm sorry, that's the hangars. You're right. That was something different on the airport. But anyway, I brought this information because also the Peter Powell Roberts volunteers and board had requested that the council consider renting or letting them manage the downstairs. And I wanted them to speak on this issue only because it's just something different. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a done deal or anything of the nature, but Mr. Ted Pecorius had some pretty good ideas in regards to getting it to where it gets used better. And they could still figure out a way to make it a community center so it could serve dual purpose here, not just as a community center.
So wait a minute, what do you mean renting, let them renting downstairs?
He's gonna.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they had some ideas
sir.
that they were going to propose.
You go ahead.
Okay,
Name and address, please.
I'm Ted Pecorius, one of the board members of Heartland Cultural Alliance, which is the father of the museum.
Okay.
We've been there going on to the 7th year. And I want to take you through a little history on this, okay?
Okay.
There's two items I want to talk about. Maria already raised the one, which is the second one I want to talk about. Okay. And you're such an important part of the history of what's happened here. Because while Maria was city manager, was when Heartland Cultural Alliance came forward with a proposal to put a museum, a first-class museum, in the city center. And we worked on that together, and the city finally approved the use of the building. And I say building because there was some possible talk about the first floor in the beginning. But going through the history of it, we negotiated a contract in 2014, and the paper you have is wrong. The annual rental fee was $10 a year, not $10 a day like it says here. I apologize. I think the dog stepped on the keys of the computer. That's the only explanation I have. Anyhow, after 3 years had gone by, we decided to ask for a lease extension. And let me tell you why we were very concerned about that. If you read the lease carefully, you'll see that either party can back out of the program at any time. When you say you have a lease, but the city can say, I want to get out, leave. Or we could say the same thing, okay? So we were concerned about that. And our concern was, well, maybe we should offer to raise the lease cost. And so we did. We came in and offered 20 times what we were currently paying. If you go from $10 to 20 times, that's $200. That was a pretty big step, okay? The program has been successful, as you mentioned. We've got a gem of a museum that satisfies the needs of Highlands County, and all the people that come down here have a place to go. We're satisfied with the service that we're getting from the city. We're satisfied with the people that we have working, and we have a lot of people working in this program. We have been presented by the state that they are prepared to issue a grant for the fiscal cost of the rental of the building.
For how long?
Of the building?
For how long?
10 years. They won't consider a grant unless you come forward with a 10-year lease. You must have a lease before you can. And that's the state requirement.
At what value? At what value?
Doesn't say any value.
You're saying,
Are you saying the building?
when you say building, or are you saying the floor, the part that you're using now?
We're using now.
Okay, good.
Oh.
So you're saying the state will pay you to have it upstairs?
The state will issue a grant
for
if we have a 10-year lease.
For the area that you have currently now?
Yeah. What does the grant cover? What can you spend it on?
The rent.
Ted.
The lease cost.
I'm right here, but the lease cost is only $10 a year,
Well,
so.
that was the first, that's when we first moved in.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that contract, and I just want to point out that I generally do that unless somebody has, huge expense getting set up and so on, because we don't know how we're going to get along with you. You don't know how you're going to get along with us.
Understand.
And it's a whole lot more flexible that way. But it's something they can consider now because they know how much they love you now, so.
Well, I know that originally the intent of the lease at the rate that the city provided was so that you could get your sea legs and be able to eventually pay rent. So is that what you're saying, is that this would be money to pay rent to the city, or is there another plan?
No, the plan is to get the lease extended for 10 years. And then the money will come directly to pay the lease costs. It can go directly to the city.
But that's my question. It would go to the city. In other words, you would be self-sufficient and you would be paying rent. Even though it's a grant, it would be paying the city the rent.
Yes.
At $200 a year.
Well, we're asking, like I said, we came in for the first extension, and we offered the city to raise the lease 20 times what we were currently paying. So we went from $10 to $200 a year.
What they're going to have to consider is that,
Pardon?
regardless of what you do, if you want a 10-year lease, they're going to need to have some comfort that they're either getting compensated for that or they're getting whatever other benefits you get from a 501c3. I just simply say that, obviously $200 a year is not going to be fair market value for a rent. You all know better than me what the area is, but and how many square feet. But the general thing to do is get it appraised. Then you can always lower it to whatever is reasonable. But if you're thinking about paying a ridiculously low amount like we did in the initial one, then there's no sense in paying a MAI or an appraiser to give you an appraisal value.
I tried this once and almost.
Be careful.
What's your
Be
step?
careful.
What's your step? You got it.
This is the document from the state to tell you what they'll do.
What's your step?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure that what he's saying is that he's getting the grant to pay a lease. I think what he's saying is, and this is the same with all grants, you have to prove that you have 10 years worth of ownership. And that's what you get with a lease, is you have like a form of ownership. It's one of the sticks in the bundle, they say, okay, of ownership. So that's typical with DEP, the FERDAP grants and all those grants. You have to show either ownership or a long-term lease. So I don't know if he's saying that, he has to have, but actually I'll give this to the clerk and she can distribute some copies to everyone, and you can have your original back once she has it, because now that we've looked at it, it becomes a public record. So.
We have to keep that document because it's a public record, Ted.
Well, we'll give it back to you.
Did you download it online?
I got another copy.
Okay, all right.
It's certainly for your file. Okay,
So-
anyhow, here I am and saying, well, okay, we would like to extend our lease for 10 years at the current rate of $200 a year. Remember, we don't have paid admissions in this, which was one of the conditions of the lease. We make our money by bringing people in to sell art, by having a store, by having donations, drive. I ran an initial drive, and we still haven't got 5 movable walls because they cost $1,900 a piece, and we just don't have that money yet. The first cut at collecting money was a pretty good deal. The second cut going to the same people the next year wasn't very good. And I have to blame that on me. But nevertheless, that's what I'm here for today, is to ask for consideration of how do we get to a lease. And I guess we have to have a document that says this lease is a lease. Okay.
Right.
And then we could go and apply for.
Yeah, we had the. Go ahead. Go ahead. We had the lease. It's just this council has to make a decision with regard to what you want in exchange for a solid 10 years being locked into the lease.
Right.
Let me ask you a question, sir.
Yes.
The grant that you say that the government or someone is going to give you,
State
what,
government.
the state, What's the max amount of rent that they would allow you?
I have no idea.
Oh,
Do you have any examples in the past of what they've been able or willing to pay?
I have not.
You could
But
probably
in
find out.
talking with them, they didn't feel concerned at all about what we were currently paying.
But
They can't be concerned for anything that's fair
Less than
market
fair
value
market
or
value.
less.
right.
yeah.
I mean, that's just, the way it is. I mean, if you can prove fair market value with an
Then
appraisal,
you got it.
then it has to be either that or something less. Because if it's more than that, then they're going to think that you're overpaying.
Would it sabotage it to still have an out?
Yeah, I mean, what they want is a solid 10 years, lease. You can give them a 10-year lease and have a, well,
How long have you been in there? 2 years, 3 years? How many?
Since 2014.
Could you count the last 4 years?
what's that?
Can you count the last 4
No,
years
this is
as
a
part of the tenure?
They want perspective 10 years before
Okay.
they give the money up.
Is
In
it
other words,
say
this is
that?
going to be money for them to do things like removable walls and things like that. If they're going to give them that grant, and we don't even know how much it is. We should probably know, because if it's only a grant for a couple $1,000s, do you want to do that in exchange for a 10-year lease? Or do you want to simply say,
Right.
I mean, you need to know how much that is. I think somebody needs to do a little investigation as to what the grant's really about and so on. But I feel pretty confident, that fair market value is where you have to start, and you can go down from there as far as the fair rent.
Okay. So we need to establish that with an appraiser?
If you want to know what fair market value is, right? If you're
But
gonna-
that's if even we're going to consider this. I mean, that's an expense on our side to have to pay for an appraiser as well. I mean, that's going to cost you as much as the grant.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to
Well,
play
if you-
devil's advocate and say,
Yeah,
what are we going to do if this doesn't work out? You
Right.
know, I mean, you got to,
10 years is a long time.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could ask staff, since they have so much time on their hands, sorry about that, to check with them on the grant and find out what's entailed here. I mean, how much they're going to get, and or how much they're capable of getting, and
Does this,
Supply that information
Yeah.
to you, we just don't have it tonight.
okay, does
Okay.
it also allow you to apply for other grants if you have this type of a contract, or just this one grant?
There's one particular cultural facilities grant, I'm sorry.
Does that include a UCAP grant as well? The one that pays for staff? There's a UCAP grant through
Galen
the,
Thomas, 703 West Winterford Street. No, that is a totally different one.
okay.
And yeah. So we're not prepared to talk about the specific grant, just the cultural facilities grant. You have to have this lease. We can't apply for it without it. And that's why.
Okay.
So really
I think the bigger thing here, maybe, is how much value do we add to the city? We are never going to be, as much as we started out with grand hopes. Every time I've studied museums, they have to be grant funded, donor funded, and city supported, government supported. And so we're never going to be a huge, profitable business, but we add value to your town. And so really, we need a partnership here. What you have already offered us, what we're doing, we feel like we're carrying our weight. We're doing what we're supposed to do. And we're just asking for the stability of a 10-year lease so that we can
Right.
get those grants to do more things.
So I'm thinking that really all decision you need to make tonight is, would you be willing to consider in the right circumstances a 10-year lease? Or is a 10-year lease totally out?
Sure.
Yeah, I have no objection with it, because the way I see it, we've already spent, 30-something thousand on rehabbing the upstairs. They've created a destination point. It's part of the economic development. It ties into the cultural core. I mean, they're doing services over there that the city cannot do on its own if we're going to have this type of an environment of cultural access to these paintings and other artists and things. I have no problem with a 10-year extension whatsoever.
I, under the right circumstances, would not have a problem with a 10-year lease, but under the current circumstances, I'm not sure that I would be in favor of it.
What are the circumstances then?
Is it $200 a year or is it $10 a year?
Well, regardless, let's say they don't get the grant.
Right.
Let's say that they're not even talking about a grant.
And
Would you
that's-
still give them 10 more years?
And that's what I'm getting at, is that really the thing to do? Am I willing to pony up tax dollars for this purpose? Is it worth that amount of money?
I guess the question would be, which we've been through this pony ride before, is how much revenue did the upstairs contribute in the past before they moved in? And the whole premise of them moving there was to add the value of the services that they bring to the community, no different than the museum
The historic
across
museum.
the street.
Yeah, and we work hand in hand with them. And you think about their lease and their situation, you know, that's a city-owned property as well.
And their offer is 200 per year to continue with that,
Right.
not 10.
Right.
Right. So I guess the question comes down to is how much faith do you have that this is going to be a benefit to our community? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, do they contribute value to our community? And my answer is yes.
I would simply argue that if you're going to give away the money, giving it away to a business that had employees and sold things and did commerce does far more than a museum will.
That's a CRA's job. The city, I think, has more of a responsibility to its citizens.
That's what I'm talking
Not
about.
just economic development.
And aside from those things, some grants set aside a certain fund of money for things like purchasing property or renting property or things like that. So, I mean, for us to offer it to you for $200, you know, which is the same as 10 as far as most people are concerned, when they're willing to give you $2,000 a month, you know, in the grant for that purpose, without interfering with the money you would get for your other purposes, it would be kind of ridiculous for us not to at least explore that option, wouldn't it?
Right.
So.
But I'm not hearing them give us any offer of $2,000.
Well, no, because we don't really know anything about it at this point. We just know that they got a grant that is available, but you got to have 10 years. You know, so I mean,
It's just making us eligible to be able to apply for that state. The
Sure.
one of the few state grants that is still being considered to be funded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've eliminated a lot of the funding options that they had for us nonprofits and museums and art and culture. So it becomes more important.
Perhaps you could ask them, you know, how much do you provide for payment of rent?
I'll research
aside
it.
from
Yeah,
it. And
sure.
if they say, well, you can
Yeah.
take rent out of this, then just bring that back and let them know so they can make a decision on that basis. But, you know, without asking, you know, we don't, you know, it'd be kind of foolish to leave that on the table if they're, you know, providing that as part of the grant.
Is that through the Division of Cultural Affairs?
Yeah.
Who's the contact there?
I'm not prepared to tell you that right
Is it
now.
someone
There's
that's
a
been
bunch
there
of
for-
ladies that I talk to
Yeah.
up there.
Okay.
Do you know offhand which one it is, Fred?
I mean, if we didn't do a 10-year project with them, then we would have to market the building and try to get it to a for-profit business to lease out for an indeterminate whatever amount of time. And there again, we're going to have to advertise that. And that's all fine and well if that's the way that this council opts to go. But at the end of the day, we also have a gazillion empty storefronts on Main Street that if any business wanted to be leasing property, why aren't they leasing that? Why would we be throwing them out and bringing something else in to a city-owned property when they can be leasing it from someone else on Main Street at fair market value?
There's a vast difference between fair market value and what it's currently being occupied at. I mean,
Well, yeah, but it's still, even if you were to rent it out, to what? Who's going to go up there? You wanna
What's
say
the
a shop?
definition of a community center, y'all? I mean,
Yeah.
a primary goal when we first thought of this, we were hoping to make a cultural center so that more things can be going on during the week. And we're at the point now where we're ready to start doing that. Before the new council, we had asked for fair market value to rent the 2 rooms up front during the week when people weren't using it for event venues. That never got finished, you know, so that is something. Listening, as I sit in these meetings and I listen to the agreements we have with the Boys and Girls Club, with the Football League, with all of these that are managing city buildings, city facilities, it hit me, why don't we manage that? And so we've manage the whole building so that we can keep it busy 52 times a year on the weekends, and we can have things going on during the week. We have people walk up and say, where's the schedule of activities? This is the community center, right? You know, so there's a lot more we could be doing for the community downstairs, using the building more. And we were given figures to look at, you know, what costs come in and what costs go out.
So this is the second part of your plans.
Our original plan.
Right, because when I thought this conversation tonight was going to be discussing the use of the downstairs for special classes and leasing it out and all of that.
That's the item too.
That's
Right.
part two.
Okay, so you're moving into part two now.
Yes, I'm moving into part two.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So, am I understanding your part two is going to be you want to rent the downstairs as well?
We want to manage the downstairs, and we would be facilitating the renting of the building, whatever the scheduling, like the Boys and Girls Club does for the Martin Luther King complex. They schedule who does what, and then if people come in and they rent it, if we were to have classes, you know, we would have to pay facilities fees.
So you wouldn't be using
But we would be
downstairs.
scheduling so that it's getting more use.
And who gets the money?
It has to go back to the city.
So what you're saying is that you would sit in lieu of staff? You're basically going to
Yes,
be
and that's
picking up
why
the
we
phone
needed staff and information, you know, how, I don't believe 20 minutes a contract is true, because I rented it for the exhibit, and it took me a lot of time figuring out what that contract really meant.
on your side, but not theirs.
Well, and sitting with them, so they would have to explain it to me.
I'm sure there are exclusions, but you know, they just gave a ballpark figure.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's more staff costs, telephone calls, and different things than just 20 minutes.
I think their proposal would actually be very good for the public.
What?
I think their proposal would be very good for the public, because right now, if someone goes to the community center to rent it, they're told they have to come to City Hall to do it. And they do what they need to do at that point and reserve it. To have somebody like this that's going to be there all the time, that can run the calendar for us, that can take care of all that, it'll free up some of our staff time as well. I think it would really be a good thing for us. It's a
The
partnership.
city would still set the rates.
City would still set the rates.
And we would
City
still clean
get
it
the
up?
money. We would clean it. We're going to still
Yeah,
continue to
so
clean it.
all they're really doing is acting as a de facto employee, doing this, picking up the phone
Exactly.
calls and all that. So
I-
when people have an issue with you, who are they going to go complain to?
Us.
Yeah, them. Now they
And
call
let me ask
us.
you
They
this
call us
question.
many times asking to rent the building, and we have to send them to City Hall because our phone number
how
is
do
on
you-
the door, and they think it's for the whole building.
Well, let me ask you this question. What will happen if another agency wanted to do what you want to do?
Well, then I would say the city would have to do an RFP or an RFQ.
So there you go.
But if there's no money in it for somebody, what you're doing it because you're already there and you're doing it out of partnership with the city. If we did an RFQ and an RFP and they're not getting any money out of it, then why would anyone else want to do it?
Well, you don't know.
Yeah, it's nobody can want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I wasn't involved with the council at all whenever this first happened, and there was a lot of concern about that being turned into an arts center.
Concern? What would be wrong with that?
No, wait a minute.
You take it away from the
Let me
community.
finish what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's how we're headed.
Oh, you mean the whole thing?
The whole thing, and we're in a speed
No, we want the
train.
Brickell building for the whole thing.
Well, okay, that's fine, but I'm just telling you that was a lot of concern at that time, and the same people that are here tonight assured us that that was not what they wanted. They wanted the upstairs.
Exactly.
There was one place downstairs that they wanted, and the council said no, no, no. And now here we are back visiting this again,
Yes,
and I'm afraid
fresh
that
council.
we're going to change that sign out front to say the Avon Park Art Museum. I'm
Well-
just saying what.
It would be nice if we had a larger sign.
Yeah,
They-
I
they
wouldn't,
actually
I
did-
wouldn't
We need a
argue
larger
this
sign.
with you, Galen, but that's just, or debated either. I'm just telling you that's what happened back then. And
They actually did propose that say the big sign be their sign, and we have a
Exactly.
little sign.
Yeah.
It said Civic Center. Also the Lincoln Civic Center. But
So Galen, whose calendar would come first? Because I would presume that you would expect to have things going on Saturdays, right? So if you have your schedule set up and someone wants to have an event, they can't use it because you've booked it for yourself.
What all we're asking for tonight is permission to follow this line of thought. We don't have an actual proposal. We haven't actually had time to examine the figures good enough, but we want permission to consider it. If you won't consider it, then we're not going to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how we're going to make this work and how we could afford it with volunteers that we're scraping by with now. If it saved the city so much money that they could afford to pay a part of a staff position, then we would actually be an arm of the city, and it would be a contract, a management contract.
I view it as a partnership.
A partnership. And then in our contract would say what you feel is most important as far as prioritizing who schedules it.
So Galen, I guess earlier I asked the question as to whether the council would be willing to consider under the right circumstances the 10-year lease, and I think they pretty much all said they did. I didn't hear anybody say no, but you feel, I mean, is that enough? I think that's what you need really, because in order to pursue the grant, you need to at least know that much.
Mm-hmm.
I have one last question for you. So if, let's just say you set it up to where you're going to have an event on a Saturday and it doesn't allow a paying customer from the city to use it, would you be paying the city the rental of that facility?
Yes. Yes.
So, okay, that right there would, okay, so it's not for free. You're not going to do this service and then get it for free as well. You'd be paying the city the rate that we currently charge our current users.
We would just be your management contractor,
Yeah.
whatever you call it, But
I think you have your point of order to go ahead and look into it.
okay, then come back to you with, now, the 10-year lease, do you want to just come back with that as well? We've said all that we have to say to everyone except Jim. He's the only one who's not here to hear it.
He's probably watching on TV.
Yep.
Yeah, yay.
Hopefully.
Hey, Jim.
So Gayla, let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. You're asking for not the, well, I guess I'm going back to the point that I started saying, what if another agency wanted to do what she's doing?
But we're not doing it yet.
No, I'm just saying, just throwing it out there, something to think
What we
about.
want, what we're offering to do.
We're offering to do,
Listen.
yes.
There's nothing.
Yeah, you're
Listen.
right,
All
you're right.
right. Hold it. There's nothing stopping any organization from bringing a proposal to the city. You don't need our permission to do that. Anyone can do that. So if someone out there wants to do it, do it. End of discussion. Mr. Levitz, did you have something?
I wanted to draw another point about a 10-year lease.
This is Mr. Levitz. Lives at.
Fred Levitt, President of Horticulture Alliance. The way it stands now, we've been there 4 years. People have, I call it investing in us because it's returning attention and money to the city through people coming here because of the museum. What we are facing is credibility building. If we come to a donor and say, well, we only have 1 year lease, hey, they're not going to invest in us. We have to prove stability and say, okay, we have a 10-year lease. Then that opens a lot of doors that are closed to us right now.
But it's not a 1 year lease. It's basically an option out. So I mean it's a longer term lease than what you're saying. But I understand what you're saying is there's an option out for either side at this point. But I think if you show a donor that, well, we've been in there for 10 years and nothing's happened.
Yeah,
Nothing's happened. How's
we
that
show
different?
the donor that we are in partnership with the city for at least 10 years. They treat us differently than if they think there is no long-term relationship in putting money into that facility.
We have other organizations that are currently leasing city-owned buildings that get donations all the time. Boys and Girls Club is case in point. They get a large amount of donations every single year, and they have the same out.
Okay, you're talking about national organizations.
Does it matter?
No,
I'm just
yes.
simply saying a
Oh, it does matter.
501c3.
They
It's
get
the same with
funding
the-
nationwide.
Okay.
We have to fund locally.
He's not
Do they
talking
gotta
about
have the
the
whole
funding. What he's talking about is just the contract itself, that even though they are a national organization, their lease is like,
It's
can be cut off in.
opt out in 60
opt out in
days.
60 days, regardless of how much money they bring in, is what he's saying.
Okay,
So, I
my
mean,
point basically is that if we want local donations, which we need, we're not a national organization. If we want local donations, we have to establish the credibility that we are going to be there and their money is going to go into a function that will last a while.
then I get that. You want a $1,900 wall upstairs, no one's going to donate it if you have a contract that's, you
Perfect
know,
point.
I understand that. And similarly, the Boys and Girls Club is the same. They get donations and they want to have, you know, the stability of being there.
They- Right, the Boys and Girls Club have a huge
Yeah.
department that does nothing but get grants and get funding. We don't, we don't. What we've done so far, I think, is totally remarkable, and it is a beginning if we work together.
And you got to have both floors to get that accomplished.
I'm not saying that, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
As far as the first floor goes, I personally think it's more trouble than it's worth.
Okay.
Okay, I believe that doing this is a service to the community so we can offer classes to, for example, the elementary schools that don't have art classes. I think we could do this to educate the public and do this to bring the artists and the community together. It's not something, it's a handful of nothing, really,
So
financially.
would it be feasible for you guys to meet with the city manager and kind of get more to the nitty-gritty of what you're talking about? Because, I mean, we could discuss this all day long, and all of us have differing opinions. I think there just needs to be one cohesive front, and then he can assess it and see whether or not it's something that the city can, A, save money on, B, make money on, or break even, whatever. I will say that I'm in support of their organization. I have no problem with a 10-year lease. That's just me. I think that the value that they bring is bigger than we know, and the impact of the dollars that that the individuals that come to Avon Park is there. They shop here, they'll go eat here, they'll go buy gas here, and they're a lure.
And they
So-
bring people here.
Right, that's my whole point, is that, anyway, that goes without saying, but anyway, I think that the city manager needs to kind of hash it out with you guys, and that way it's not here, because we bounce around way too much.
We're already working on that. He's been very helpful, giving us information. And what does it take? What does it take? You want another detailed proposal?
A little more detail, because we can't do a contract based on, just suppositions. So if you could get more information, like I discussed earlier, is there going to be a set aside in a grant for rent, or is it going to be part of the grant? That type of information.
Certainly.
It's always going to help your case to be able to show how many people you bring here, to show what sort of financial impact you have on the community. So,
And we
all of that
actually, we're very, because we do deal with grants, we have tracking in place. And we had 300, right under 300 tickets of people that came in. Now, that we didn't catch everybody, so we would like to estimate that we had 300 at least come through our doors. We had over $3,500 worth of sales that day. So the artists that are trying to make a living with art, they were hugely benefited.
Right.
So
obviously, that's the stuff that we want to see. So if you can put that on paper and give it to us whenever you come back, that's going to help you a lot.
Plus, you need that for your grant.
But yeah, we're keeping all that documentation because that's the only way you get a grant.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on the? Yep. Appreciate it. Is there anything else on the community center?
Nope.
All right. Church Service Center building.
All right, we had touched a little bit on this the last time, and also in the amount of paperwork that city staff provided, there was a cost here of the funding that the insurance company, I'm presuming this is what they paid the city for the damage to the building?
That's
So-
the only check that we received from the insurance company.
Okay, but they broke it down. These are the breakdown of that. So in terms of, where am I? What page is this on? Old police station. So the one that actually has a copy of the check at the top of the page. First item, it says Old Police Station. They paid $280,000 on that?
Yes.
Yes.
So, but then we talked about demoing the building, but then someone said it doesn't need to be demoed. What's the plan with this $280,000? Are we gonna rehab it?
I'd like to know that, because nothing's been done.
We need to know, is the building lost or is it not?
I spoke with John Jeffo today.
Who is?
He is in charge of the Church Service Center.
Okay.
And has been for 11 or 12 years, I think. I spoke with him in my office, and he believes, I haven't seen the inside of the building, but he believes that it can be salvaged. He would like to know that it can be salvaged, of course. I intend to go there myself this week and look at it myself, but we got an open hole in the roof that's had 50 inches of rain in the last year.
We need a
David?
contractor or a engineer to tell us.
There was one done. Wasn't there, when this first started, there was a report?
Only on the Brickell, not on the.
No, it was done for the church services building as well, because it was it was done not by a engineer. It was done by the people in Sebring at the,
Oh, Mr. Longshore?
yes. And his recommendation that the building be destroyed. And I think you said at the time that you and Bernard said that you didn't want the building destroyed. But there was a report that was done by the, what position
You talking
does
the
he
building
hold?
inspector?
Yeah, the building inspector.
We need a
Yes.
contractor or an engineer.
Yes.
Well, not just
Okay.
that, but, sometimes you want to factor in the fact that it might be more costly to demo it simply because it has asbestos or something like that in there. I don't know
There
how
was no
old this building is,
asbestos in
if it's before
Building was built
'80s.
in the 1920s.
Oh, well, it probably has something like that in it, but maybe not, it actually has before asbestos, but it's hard to say. I mean, ceiling tiles, floor tiles, those
It was
are,
completely gutted, except for the structure of the wood and the stairs and stuff. It was completely gutted in the 1980s when it was converted to be the police station from the
Okay.
old fire station.
well, '80s are problematic with regard to those things, so, it's something to consider.
Yep.
So it has to be looked at. Part of what I wanted it on the agenda for was to see what we were going to do with it. It may be a little premature to discuss what the uses of the building will be, but it does tie into the whole purpose of what the building is for. If we plan on keeping it, what are we going to use it for? If we're just going to demo it and use the money elsewhere, then what are we going to use that money for? And I didn't know what the council sentiment was on that in terms of, do you want to continue using it as a church service center for distribution of items for the needy, or did you want to expand it into more of a community resource center to where you had people being able to use it at a larger rate? Get more bang for your buck, or would we want to use it for other nonprofits to distribute things from there? I don't know. I actually called both Jane Bralinger and Pastor Bill to talk about that. I know that prior to running for office, I spoke to them at length regarding the homeless people in the community that don't have a place to shower or do their laundry or go pick up a birth certificate or use a computer to apply for a job. There just isn't a place like that. And they've been doing a lot of the work out of their church. And anyway, I just thought this would be a location that's been historically used for the underserved. And if we are going to rehab it, then why not rehab it to the extent that you could use it for multi-use things, not just a pantry. So just a thought, I know that there's statistics out there and all kinds of numbers of people living on couches and stuff, but I think that we do have residents in our community that vote that are sleeping on someone's couch because they're actually homeless. But yet they don't have the wherewithal to be able to do some very simple things because they don't have the computer, they don't have a phone, they don't have a contact. They don't have an ID because they can't get their birth certificate because they don't have a computer to get it, and they don't have transportation to go somewhere. This is a centrally located place where they can do those sorts of things. Just a thought.
My view on it.
Go ahead. I think Ms. Jane Berlinger did come to the previous council and with some type of thought of something that
Talking about a different parcel, the one
Yes.
that has the skate park on it.
There you go.
Yeah.
But that was to include the church services building as well.
Yeah.
Because we were told that by the Mr. Longshoreman that the building could not be salvaged. So, but I don't know now, so y'all have to find those reports.
My view on it is that it's a historic building. So first of all, we got to find out, is the building a lost cause? Is it not? If it's not, then we have the issue of, do you want to tear down a historic building? You know, do you not? Then it almost simplifies it if the building gets torn down, because then sky's the limit. You can build whatever you want that'll fit on that thing. But if the building is not to be torn down, then you're kind of limited on what the building can have in it. But we really can't make any of those decisions till we find out.
But when you're looking at a historic building, it has to be on a registry and it has to be in its original form. And I don't know how many times it's been altered on the inside to where it no longer is a historic building. It's just a shell of a building that was historic, that you have the appearance and the facade of one, but it really isn't historic. I mean, otherwise you can apply for historic grants through the through the Division of Cultural Affairs, and then you need a match and all that stuff. A lot of our buildings aren't historic anymore. They're just contributors to the historic area of Avon Park.
I'm not saying that we physically couldn't or we legally couldn't.
Yeah.
I'm just simply saying that a
Now,
lot of
I'd love
people
to
that are
keep it.
from here
Yeah.
know what that
Yeah.
building is. They know what it was.
And I want to keep it as well. I'm all for keeping these historic buildings, totally. I think it's part of the charm of Avon Park, aside from our heritage.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So if the issue is that we just need to get not an estimate, someone to inspect it like you say, then go for it. But I want to ensure that we don't spend that money on anything else in the time being.
I'll see if I
Until
can
we
get
know what
I'll see
the
if I can
building's
get
for.
Mr. Murray, the one that's gonna look at the Brickell. I'll see if I can get him to look at that as well. May not be on the same day, but I'll see if I can get him to take a look at that.
The money that was given to us by the insurance agency, what fund did it go into? Did it go directly into the general fund?
No, it was broke out.
It was broke out. Okay. Is there any way of tracking those funds to see if they're still available or if they've been spent?
I can look into it.
Okay.
When was that check written?
Back in
5/6/2018.
Because if they've already been spent, I would like to know who did it and why.
I guarantee they haven't been spent.
Okay.
Maria, are you saying that you would like to see that building added onto to where we could do all the things that you just brought up and the city fund that?
Well, I don't know how big it is inside, to be honest with you.
You can't
Well, I'm
add
just-
on to
Let
it.
Jane, she can tell
I'm
you.
just saying, why don't we let the people that want to do this pay for it instead of the taxpayers? You know, I don't have a problem in rehabbing and seeing the church centers, go back, but as far as all of the other things, the ones that let them pay for that. Let them get their own donations and let them get their own volunteers and workers.
And that may
things.
very well be the case. I just looked at it from the perspective of nothing's getting done. I know that they're working out of a trailer on the side and handing food out from there.
And
you know-
a borrowed garage.
Right.
No,
and
I'm
then they're all
not against the
volunteers.
church service center,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about the other things that you're talking about.
Yeah, and that the church service center, they're all part of the same family.
I understand.
It's all the same donations going to the same thing. So whether it's other things being done from the building, that would be incumbent on the individuals that have it. We're going to have a lease agreement, because I don't know that we even had one with the church service center in the past. And I
Yes,
think if
we
we
do.
did. But whatever we do, it has to be revised because times have changed. We have other needs in our community and changes, and I think that we just need to revisit that whole social thing. We can't give money to certain causes, but we can have a building for people to use that building for certain causes, and that's where I'm going with this.
I think we're about to hear a little bit about those causes
All
right
right.
now. Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Jane Braylinger, 2441 West Nautilus Road, Avon Park, and I am chairman of the board of directors for the Hands for Homeless, which we service homeless in our area, and we have outgrown our space. And I've been talking with David, our city manager, and I had come to you previously. We were looking at the skate park. The building that you're speaking of, the old station we call it, is not large enough for the services for the church service center and for the homeless ministry that we're intending to do and expand to. There is only about 1,800 square feet in there, and that John's been operating out of when he was operating out of that building. And there's some code problems with the stairs. The stairs are not usable for the general public, let's put it that way. But, and that building, I definitely inspected. If it can be, there may be some engineering things that need to be done, not just renovation. You may need some engineering things done there to bring it up to, be a safe building. But as far as the Hands for Homeless ministry, we definitely are looking for a space either with the Church Service Center, we've met with their board repeatedly, or on our own. We are in need of about 3,000 square feet for the ministries that we do, and we want to expand into that we haven't been able to do till this point. The skate park is a good, viable option for us. And also, David and I have been talking about 18 Pine, I believe it is.
That's not our building yet.
That's as a possibility down the line. There's just, right now we're in the research stage. So, I guess what I want to say to y'all is I definitely am looking for help and a partnership to get property, whether we need to build on it or whether there's a building on it. We definitely are looking at that. So I don't want to be discounted, but I do know that the station is not large enough to house probably more than one ministry.
Is your organization affiliated with the church, with the Congregational Church?
No.
It's a totally separate entity.
Yeah, we are a 501c3, and our board, I'll hand these out, but our board of directors is made up of myself, Charlene Edwards, Maureen Grodzinski, Carol Ann Breton, Pastor Aaron Jaja, Father Nick McLaughlin, and Sue Johnson. So that's, then we also have members that are part of that. Those include Sandy Billings, Suzanne Honeycutt, Mary Love, Georgia Mason, and Larry Roberts with the Veterans Association. So we're a community-based organization. We are operating out of Union right now because that's the facility that we have, but we have outgrown that. The feeding program that we do would continue at the church because they have the kitchen facilities, and we don't want to, they head that up, they spearhead that part. But we do many other ministries besides that with the homeless. So if you had any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. And I'll hand these out to y'all, get you updated.
Do we have any questions for him?
She threw out a lot of locations here. I personally am not fond of the Pine Street location, only because we do have the stigma of the commercial entities along Main Street. And, I want to keep the Church Service Center location. In my mind, I'd like to keep that as the location because it is centrally located for the city. And then if you came into one building and then you got church services up there, then now we have two locations where people have services going. I just would rather see something that's centralized. That's just me, which is why I like the location of the police department, old police building.
And I like the skate park because it's right across the street from it. And the homeless, actually, some of the services that they need are the clothes and the food, which we do not provide. Clothes and food, canned goods.
So there's no building at the skate park?
We'd be building.
So you would be building it? You would build it with your funds?
Mm-hmm. We would have to, yeah. And that way we can also make it so that it's handicap for showers. When we have showers, we have to have two, and at least one of them has to be handicap. Also, the laundry facilities, it's hard to find a building with all the plumbing. We can put it in, but yeah, it's doable. But that we know that's a challenge we're going to have, but we're prepared to work towards it. So,
I have a question. Since
sir.
The church has so much property, why don't you maybe go into a lease agreement with them at a reduced rate or something and keep it over close to the church? I mean, wouldn't that be beneficial to you?
We thought about that, but reality is the church already has plans for the property down the line, and it includes a children's center and larger hall because their fellowship hall isn't big enough. As it is, we're filling it every Thursday when we feed the homeless. So they have intentions for that property, so it's not available. So I thought about that too.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for him?
No, I appreciate your coming up. I mean, I know that, I know there's a need. you
Is
know.
it a need that the taxpayer should bear?
And I think that that's something that we really have to come to grips with, because there's a lot of things that we do. I mean, the Boys and Girls Club is our de facto recreation department, and there's a need for that. So,
Call me a conservative, but I disagree.
well, we don't have a recreation department.
I know we don't. I don't think that.
Anyway, that's not on the subject list here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perhaps it will be. Any other
And that's
questions on
fine.
this?
So the issue is, you're going to get a contractor or an engineer to come in and give us an assessment of the building.
I
and-
agree with you. I don't think we need to be into that at all.
No. It's one thing to feed people. We've done that for a great many years. It's a very beloved service. I know, it's right by my shop. I see it all the time. I mean, people thoroughly enjoy it. They need it. So we've had that for a long time. I don't see a problem with keeping it as is. But in either regard, we have to figure out what's going on with the building first before we do anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's step one. I'm sure there'll be many more steps along the way. Anything else on that?
No.
Is there anything else to bring before the city, or I guess we can't?
That's really what you already talked about.
Yep. Is there anything to bring before the city related to what we've already talked about? Gerald? Name and address, please.
But Brenda, you ain't got to go sit down. I'm gonna give you real quick, baby.
You better hurry.
Okay, Gerald Snell, 320 East Washington Street, Avon Park, Florida.
Take all the time you want, Gerald.
Sit down, Brenda. You had mentioned it before a few years ago when Irma came. And
Yeah.
special thanks again to you for your generous donation toward us, me and Councilwoman Doris Smith and her son. Thank you, Ms. Gray, who opened up your doors for when Irma came as a staging area. But like you said, I would like to see us come up with a disaster preparedness committee. Like you did mention, it was shot down. Because I contacted Radiice, the company, and they said it would be easy. We just get in contact and go through the necessary steps, and in case we had a disaster. But I was told that if we got trucks of ice that were brought into our city, the word would get out, and other people from Lake Placid Sebring would come up here and get in line to get the ice, which that's not here or there. But I would like to see us come up with a committee that will be prepared, during a disaster like you expressed.
Okay. Anything else?
Also, Ms. Flowers, if you could, Ms. Galen, I think you were on the committee. We met with, I'm a Publix person. We met with the Publix rep and came away feeling so excited. I know the lady was about to retire, but every time I call City Hall, I want to call names and talk to a certain person, well, I'm going to contact them. I'm going to contact them. I'm going to contact them. Never heard anything. If you could in the near future, do you still have her card? She's retired now anyway. But possibly look into contacting Publix administration offices, and maybe we could set up a time to meet with whoever the new rep is to hopefully get another Publix back in our area.
Okay.
And lastly, I've been asked questions about the new grant that was awarded to the cities. The
CDBG?
Yes, when are applications going to be available for that?
They're going to have to procure the consultant to do that, and you got a housing CDBG.
It's all stuff that's not going to be on the list. It's on.
Yeah,
It's
you
not on
can't.
your agenda. But you can bring.
But
it
if
up at the
he's
next
asking
meeting.
the question,
Yeah,
then what do we do?
when are citizens going to be able to apply for it?
It's public.
Give the city manager.
Coming
It should be on
soon.
the website.
Coming soon?
Coming soon.
Next month? Okay.
Yep.
That's it. Thank you, sir.
Got it. Okay. Is there anything else to bring forward the city?
Well, if it's not on the list, then we can't, right?
Right.
Okay, well, I motion that we adjourn.
Seeing none, I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All right. We are adjourned.
David, was that not a roofing problem with the contractor on the roof where the hole was? Yeah. Well, go back and get him back, make him come fix it.
Yes, ma'am.
So what did I miss?
Oh.